Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, this is a third introduction. Today's Sunday, September 22nd, and I am going to upload this video today, and it'll be available on Monday. And so, I just want to do this other introduction, put it in the beginning of the video, because it's really important or imperative to my election coverage. My coverage of the election is predicated on the idea that we're all effed, right? That we're all completely in a horrible position. We're screwed over. The system is collapsing, and it's as bad as it could get, right? Like it's the calm before the storm. And I've talked about this for years. The apocalypse is funny until it's not. Like I really find it funny right now because we all have full bellies. We have electricity. We have internet. We have pretty much everything we had in our life up until this point. And when that disappears, and that's going to be whatever it is. And neither of these candidates is going to fix this, right? There's two ways to look at it. One is, what's better for me? What's better for me and my family personally? Like that's pretty much how everybody votes. And I really don't know which is better. Because some of it's like what's better for my job here, what's better for, whatever the policies people are going to put in. I would think that Kamala Harris would be better just from the sense that Trump is going to probably burn everything down that he can, like a little old man who has nothing to lose, who's bitter and angry and hates the establishment and wants to use whatever power he has to like f everybody over, f the people over that, kill the people who or hurt the people that attacked him, but also not care about the collateral damage of the people that support him. One of those things where you get obsessed with, like let's say your house was infested by vermin, and you poison the crap out of these vermin, and you kill all the vermin, but then everybody in the house gets cancer, right, from the toxicity that you've unleashed to get rid of all the insects and rodents and things. And so, like with Trump, I think it's and just it'll be so unpleasant a Trump presidency, right? Kamala Harris, it's about her winning, which nobody really wants to see. At least anybody who's not a completely hypnotized Democrat. See her celebrate and have her be the first woman and just all the happiness that she'll get, like nobody wants her to have, right? So, but either one of those things is insignificant because in terms of either of these two people, winning is losing, right? Everything in America is about who wins, and you've been trained that it's so important to win, it's so important to get the promotion. But it's one of those circumstances where if you win, you lose. I mean, every president ages twice as fast as, those 4 years of being president, 8 years of being president, it's that they age 16 years or 8 years, depending on how long they're president. The 2 years for every year that they're president, and so you can see it, and it's not even though they want to win, it's not really a power position. There's nothing really good about it. You're actually more helpless as a president because of everything that you're undergoing to assume this what people consider a powerful position. There's people above you, the people in the shadow government that are handling and managing you, and there's all these ways that you're just a puppet and a scapegoat, and then there's all the people you're supposed to please, and you're managing a big frickin' mess, right? A corrupt mess. But in this case, it's even worse because whatever's going to happen is not going to be good. There's no saving the system. So that's not going to happen. So you're going to be in charge of a failing situation, which is the worst thing to be put in an administrative situation where something's going to go bankrupt and fail. And, there's no bankrupt like Trump can go personally bankrupt, but America can't go bankrupt, right? And Trump is, they'll just tear him apart for the last 4 years. He has no idea what's waiting for him. It's way worse than anything he's experienced so far. And everyone else would have to go through it with him, and it would just be a, nightmare divided country, right? Like you look at Joe Biden, and he's a ghost, and I'm going to show you a video of his. Like, no one cares about him. No one talks about him anymore. Like, everyone just wishes he would disappear. And he, he's still our president, but, he's just gone. They've ditched him, and they threw him off to the side of the road. And he's wandering around there with, with a failing brain, Parkinson's, shuffling along the side of the road, right? And nobody cares about him. He's like gone. They've banished the guy, right? And that's the best thing that could have happened for him, right? Another 4 years with his medical condition. People cling to this. It's like whoever gets the ring of power in the Lord of the Rings. It's not a good thing. There are people, lots of people, if you look it up, if you do your research, who win the lottery and they're miserable. All their family and friends descend on them. Everyone comes looking for a handout. They don't really know how to handle the money. They're really not made for it, and they just become miserable. They're more, they're lonely, and they have stuff now, but they, everything that they used to do, the people used to hang out with, whatever it is, their social circle, eventually like all turns on them and whatever, and they just become miserable because it's not a good thing that's happened to them. All the things they thought they wanted to do aren't as fun, right? I used to see this with my dad in his retirement. He talked about retirement for years. He just couldn't wait to retire. And as soon as he retired, he fell apart mentally and physically. He just, shriveled up and got sick and, mentally, he like fell apart. Like he couldn't, he went crazy, all these things. He deteriorated because, having a job and a purpose. People think about their retirement, getting rid of their slave job, but then they have no purpose, right? They don't find they don't have any reason to get up in the morning. There's no responsibilities. They're just, waiting to die. And it just, they feel their health falls off the cliff, right? Because they don't, a person that doesn't have goals and ambitions and things to do, doesn't have responsibilities, you just, it's like your whole life force, you just get old really quickly. And the other thing about this is winning, like and getting a promotion. Like people think about that as a good thing. And there are two examples from my own life when I first was a counselor, and years later after I got my master's degree, and I was a clinician at two different treatment centers. And the first one I was a counselor, and there was 5 of us that worked the two ends of the week, right? There was 10 staff, and 5 we worked each week, but we had a one-on-one. One kid was such a mess. The people that had the kid in the treatment center were paying for an extra staff just for him. So we had 6 staff, which was great. Like, it was really the amount that you needed. 6 staff because the kids were crazy. Like it was a prison-like environment, and there was restraints, and just it sucked. And so having an extra staff was just a necessity. And there was a person who supervised each end of the week. There are 2 supervisors and 1 unit manager. And there was a woman who kind of had a great personality. She was supervisor on the end of the week that I was working. And I had gone back and forth between the 2 ends of the week, but I ended up working the back half of the week. We go to a staff meeting on Wednesday and then work Thursday, Friday, and a double on Saturday. And so there was a lot of staff on Wednesday, and that was when we could get things done or whatever in the unit, right? But this woman left. She was like in college, and it was like mostly young people. Like I was in my late 20s, and everyone else was like kind of fresh out of college, so I was kind of older than the people because it took me for a while to, like, it was just a crappy job you got like when you were fresh out of college, and they wanted me to fill this position. Well, we got this guy who was a nightmare, and he came in from the little kid's cottage, and the little kids loved him. Like there was kids who were, between the ages of like, 5. Really young kids, 4 or 5 years old. It was horrible that they were in this treatment center, and they were, and the oldest kids were like 7 or 8 years old. And the kids loved him over there, but they hated him in our cottage. and he got into this kind of mano-y-mano with this one really tough kid that we had, and it was just chaos, and it sucked. And he lasted like a couple months, and then they wanted me to take over. There was two lesbians that were, one ran the supervisor position on the other end of the week, and the other was the unit manager. And they really liked me, but there was two younger women who had been there longer than I had that really deserved the position, and they didn't really like them. One girl was like really aggressive, and the other one, she was kind of nerdy, and they didn't like the supervisors. They didn't get along with these two women, right? And so they wanted to give me the position, but I thought about it, and I just ended up getting like a new Toyota Tercel, which was imperative for me to drive to New Mexico from Massachusetts when I ended up moving all these things. I just started doing the Sajmark meditation, and I thought about it, and I'm like, if I get this job over these two young women, they are going to quit, or they're going to just be miserable. Like they'll feel like they were cheated, and that I jumped them because of whatever, because I was a guy, or I was older or whatever. And they really wanted the job, especially this one girl who ended up getting it. Like, she really wanted the job, and we weren't really friends, but I was like, they'll quit. And it took about like 3 to 4 months before you were worth anything on this job, because the kids they didn't even know who you were, and they would test every person that came in new. If you had a lot of new people, it was chaos. And so they just the kids would just act out, and it was a nightmare. And there would be all these restraints, and there would be and when the kids acted out, the other kids would act out. They would all you'd have almost like these prison riots, right? It was really bad. And I'm like, I needed the money because I just got this new car. But I looked at the job, and I'm like, it's just not going to be better for me to take it. And, we'd be down like all these staff, and it would just be hell, and I would be, miserable. The cottage was already sort of chaotic because of that old guy. The other guy had just, been such a sucky. He just had failed so badly. And so I told the unit manager I didn't want the job. I ended up getting a part-time job anyway. So like it all worked out, which I made more money. It was a part-time job that actually paid more than I was making. It was a shitty job that didn't pay that much. And so the girl who got the job really wanted the job, and she knew she needed me, and she was like forever grateful. Like, it was like this thing. And I was able to bring in all this, I was reading the books of my Sajmark meditation. I was able to bring in some of the philosophy, and I kind of ran the place from inferior position, without the supervisor position, from a lower position, because she like just needed me. Like, it was a whole thing. I didn't even anticipate that, but she was always grateful, because so it was like the best of both worlds. And then I implemented a bunch of the philosophy, and it worked, and things just kind of worked out. We ended up getting 2 other guys to work there, which that was a big thing, because you needed guys on. The kids needed male figures there, and the kids were they're just horrible people, and they would push women around and things. But it was a job. All these counseling jobs, it's there's a lot more women working at these jobs than men. And so we ended up having 3 men and 3 women, and it worked out great. We had this really glorious time where the kids, we had no restraints, and we were able to play sports and go on trips and do things, and the kids just all we had a good group of kids, and it just was like this magical time. And then it all just sort of ended, and I was realized I was being pushed out, and I moved to New Mexico, and all these other things unfolded, right? But I was able to test out the theory of Sajmark. It was just a wonderful time. And so the same thing happened years later when I came back to that area in Massachusetts, and I got a job at another treatment center. And this time I was a clinician. I had a master's degree now, and I had a higher level role. And there were these, there was like 6 or 7 counselors, clinicians, and there was 6, I think, caseworkers. I'm not sure. Maybe it was 5. I don't know. It was 5, maybe 5 clinicians and 5 caseworkers, and there was a person who supervised everybody. They had this extra job, like little. They were the top clinician, and there was a person who was the manager of the whole thing, right? Same kind of situation, but this was clinical. And the second position became available, and my family and I was struggling. I needed more money. I mean, it was, I just wasn't making enough money. We were just living in a poverty, but it was only like $1,000 more a year. And I went to interview, and my boss loved me. Like I could have just, if I wanted the job. And again, being a guy was important because it just, having there was more women working these jobs than men, right? But my youngest son was born, and we had a home birth, and it was kind of nice, like not going to a hospital was a whole thing. I delivered him, right? It was a whole thing, and when I came back to work, I was just, I was gone long enough that I got used to not being in a freaking prison-like environment. That there was a bunch of sex offenders that was just unbelievably stressful to work in. I mean, both these treatment centers were brutal jobs, and when you left, it was like you came back to the real world, like you were in hell. Like there's just any kind of these prison jobs or any of these jobs where there's really deviant people in there is really hard to work in. And so I came back and I interviewed, and the interview went as badly as it could have been. Like my boss, like whenever we had like one-on-one supervision, which was like once a week, she would just laugh the whole time. I would tell her stories, and she kind of loved me, and she wanted to give me the job. But like, it was weird. The whole interview was uncomfortable, and everything she said that the job entailed were like things I sucked at and didn't like to do. Like I'm like, for an extra $1,000, this is going to be horrible. I was going to work more hours, have more responsibility, and do more work I didn't like to do, and still do my regular job. I'm like, this is, I said, yeah, I don't think this is good, right for me. And there's a woman who started maybe a month after me who really wanted the job, and she had just had a baby. And same thing happened. Like, so I didn't take that job. I didn't take, the promotion, because you're always supposed to get promotions. But I was like, it wasn't what was better for me. And, maybe 3 months later, and I was about to, I ended up leaving. My family and I were moving. Like, you just couldn't do these jobs very long. And we ended up moving to the South, and then, all these things unfolded. The farming, the homesteading, all these things. And so, the birth of this channel and all that stuff. And, it was kind of late, and I had stayed there a little bit later than normal. It was, it was a salaried position, so your hours sort of fluctuated. And she was there, this woman who had gotten the job, and she just had a baby. And we hadn't really ever talked. We were like friends. And I saw her, and she was like on the verge of tears. And I'm like, you okay? Like, what's going on? I didn't really want to know, but, like, it was just like I had to say something, like one of those kind of things. And she was like, I'm falling the fuck apart. She was just like miserable. And she's like, the woman who ran the place, I knew she had these really bad headaches, but she was taking morphine for migraine headaches, like almost on a daily basis. Like she was so stressed out at this job. The woman who was in charge, the woman who managed the counseling department, and she was always getting bullied by the person who ran the residential. There was residential staff, and then there was school staff, and she was being bullied by the guy who ran the whole thing. This guy is a Russian guy, and he was like tough, like he was like 6'5", and like I don't know how he got into the counseling field, but it wasn't like he was like a Freud-like person, not like a touchy-feely type of want to help people kind of guy. He was brutal, and like she was just like the unit manager was falling apart, and there was all these problems, and she was putting all this responsibility on this young woman. This young woman just had a baby, so we had both, I had my youngest, and she had a baby like before that, and she had a baby at home, might have been her first, and there's a guy who worked there who was there was 5 programs, 5 different semesters of these clinical programs, and one of them was victim reunification. And he ran victim reunification, and every kid had to go through the program, so he knew every kid on campus. He was a little guy, older, like probably in his 50s or 60s, and he the victim reunification, they had to write this victim letter, apology letter, whether they read it to the victim or not. Like ultimately, the goal was to reunify them with the victim and have the kid apologize and take full responsibility for the sexual offense, right? And sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't, but they still had to go through this whole program to, feel remorse and empathy for their victim, like feel how bad they hurt the victim. And he would go up to the kids and say, like if the kid victimized somebody named Susie or Johnny, he'd call them by their victim's name, right? These kids, because he was so into this job of victim empathy, right? I mean, the place then it was called victim empathy. And so the woman says that this guy's hitting on her, and it's really uncomfortable. He wrote her this long love letter. She reads me this fucking love letter. It is pathetic, right? The guy's like talking about his wife, doesn't want to have sex anymore. She's like crippled or something. She's got some like disease. And he's like twice her age, and she's just had a baby. And he's like, and I'm like, oh my God, like she's just, and she tells me all this stuff. And some of it has to do with this job I would have gotten that she had. And I'm like, oh my God, I dodged a fucking bullet. Like, I can't believe, like, she's ready to crack. Like, and her husband thinks it's funny. Like, she goes home and tells her husband, and he's cracking up because some 6-year-old guy's hitting on his, wife who's got to come home and deal with some newborn. And she's getting, like, no support from anywhere. And she's like, every day I'm just like on the verge of tears, and I'm going to, she's like, I'm going to snap, right? And, so there were these two situations where I could have been promoted, and the job was mine for the taking. Like, it just was mine. Like, I was going to be promoted. And it's just a thing that you do. It's more money, and you go higher up it's just what you're always supposed to take promotions, right? But I was like, I just didn't feel it. Like, first I wanted them. I thought it was, what I should do. But my heart said, no, this isn't right. And like later on, I almost immediately I knew that I dodged a bullet. And things went much better because I didn't take these promotions, right? And so this is the same thing with this presidency. Whoever wins, they'll be happy for a little bit, and they feel like they won something, and America's about competition. But they're not. They're winning a big bag of shit, right? And so, like, the whole thing is silly because it's not. I woke up this morning and there was a tweet from some guy I don't know. Like, I get recommended these tweets often by right-wing people, and the guys that said, "My wife left me alone with my 2 liberal in-laws," and that's all you could read. So it's kind of compelling. So I clicked on it, and the guy said, they asked him, what's the difference between Republicans and Democrats? And he said, well, strong men follow strong men, and weak men follow weak men and weak women. And they said, my wife wouldn't let me say anything more for the rest of the visit, right? And I'm like, yeah, there you go, strong man. And so, this idea he had that Trump's a strong man and men who follow Trump are strong men, and none of those things are true. Trump is not strong. Like, he is pathetic and weak, and he's like a child. He's immature. He's a little bitch, right? And this whole illusion and the fight thing, all this stuff is just fake. It's always been fake. He's not strong. Like, it's not what anybody who has a level of critical thinking skills would say is strength. Like, he's very weak, and he's a weak person. And if you're following this guy, you're deluding yourself, and you're also a weak person, right? And so that's why people root for. It's people who are weak that need to delude themselves and see that there's something here that there isn't. Whether it's Kamala or whether it's Trump, you have to imagine something's going to happen that the rest of us know isn't. There's no happily ever after here. There's no fairy tale. There's no magic here. Neither one of these people no one can save the country, but certainly not these two horrible people. And so there's no reason to root for one side or the other, because really it's just, you're picking your poison. Okay, so with that being said, here's the other introductions. I just want to say I just realized I left out an important part of that story. So here's this guy, this older guy that's hitting on this younger woman who's pregnant, who wants no part of him. And she went and told the manager, and the manager won't do anything because she doesn't want to fire this guy because he apparently was at a school and he sexually harassed one of the other teachers and he got fired. So he was a teacher more than he was a counselor. He really didn't have the credentials to do this job. But he was so beholden to this manager and the job, and there was such a high turnover. He had been there longer than anybody else. She refused to deal with it. She refused to stick up for this woman who's being sexually harassed at a treatment center that was about sexual offenders. And this guy was about victim empathy, and he's putting this woman in a very stressful position. She's miserable, right? And, she's in this horrible situation where this old guy is like, it isn't just like he wants to have sex with her. Like he's lonely and he's psychologically unstable and, he's got some kind of issues and he's putting all this stuff on this young woman and it's just icky. And, the counselor, the woman who's head of the counselors and, she's supposed to be anti-abuse is letting it happen, right? Like it's so fucked up. And it's, shows the hypocrisy of the whole thing. Because this guy, is telling all these kids that they have to be empathetic to their victims, and he has no empathy for this woman. That he's got this bizarre fantasy, like she's, she's just had a baby, and she's half his age, and she's going to leave her husband, and he's going to take care of this baby. I mean, it's just like he's crazy. Like they're all fucking crazy, right? And I've experienced this over and over again. Things like this, that the insanity that exists in the counseling world. Like I saw it over and over again in the counseling field, even when I went to my master's degree program. Like a lot of these people are just batshit crazy that work as clinicians. They're like the worst, physician, heal thyself. And so, yeah. All right, so here's the other introductions. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I did a very harsh video about Trump, the last couple videos, but the last one particularly. And I wanted to say that what I do here has nothing to do with who's going to become president or any of those things. So I could care less. It's the degradation of our system that I'm talking about here, right? I've already done a long voiceover. I don't think I said anything about the whole shadow banning. I'm getting less and less people saying, "Oh, I've rediscovered your channel." So I'm wondering if YouTube is backing off recommending my channel. So again, the thumbs up is the best way, easiest way, and then leaving a comment, even if it's an emoji, and then all the other ways to support the channel through one-time donations or joining the membership program or any of these other things. Okay, so let's get to the, like I said, I did a long introduction already, but I'm not even sure what that's about. Today's Saturday, September 21st. But I had this one thought, and I want to make this short. When things go wrong, when things go the way they are, when things get morally degraded, it's always the spiritual people that are at fault, or the spiritual people that have failed. If God was going to blame somebody, it would be the fault of the spiritual people. Unless this was part of a plan, which it always is. So there's, God doesn't blame because of that, right? But whenever there is a degradation of the human condition and things go to the dark side like they are now, it's because of spiritual slippage and the slippage of the spiritual people. Because, if there's some way to break it down, let's say there's 10% saints, higher developed souls, 10% like evil people who are actively going against the will of God, right? And I'm talking about souls that incarnate life after life and just want to, like they hate God and they're just, the soul itself can't hate God, but the personality configuration and the samskaric pattern, the impressions that it takes from life to life there is this element, like what people describe as the devil or demons, right? So if you say there's 10% of those type of people, sociopathic narcissists, and there's 10% of spiritual people and saints, then you have the other 80%. And the other 80% can be swayed one way or another. And most of the time, the spiritual people, I mean, this is times other than the Kali Yuga, I think there's 3 other yugas and longer time period, a golden age and these things, right? At these other times, spiritual people are emboldened, and the saints are, and the tendencies of everybody else goes up. The tendencies go up, right? Their higher tendencies are activated, and they more tend to be good. They move towards the divine side. They become godly people. And in our age right now, the Kali Yuga, the religions are compromised and they've become power organizations, and they're full of lies and manipulation and evil. The religions themselves, the people at the top of the religions, the popes and the ministers, the people in charge of these religions, are completely corrupt and evil people. They've worked their way into these religions, and so the religions themselves have been completely compromised. And so when things are going the way they're going in our society, it's a religious failure. It's a failure of the religions that are there for the stupider people. The higher developed souls, if you're a saint, a spiritual person, the system itself is going to pull you down. It's going to compromise you. It's just going to drag you away from ever realizing your full potential. And let's say even you did. Let's say you became a real spiritual person. Nobody's going to freaking listen to you because they're all degraded and they don't care about any of that stuff, right? So you can't let it get to this state, because now it's automatic. The system automatically, like, basically denuts any kind of spiritual person, dehearts, makes spiritual people like suffer in some way that they can't become what they're meant to become. The evil people have the system exactly where they want it, and the rest of the people are very easily influenced. So you can't let it get to this state. You can't be compromised, and it's when the higher developed souls get compromised, and the people who tend to be good people get compromised. They got bought and sold. I talked about people leaving the farm, leaving their traditional lifestyle and going to the city and working for money. And, some of it they were forced, some of it they were lured, but people get lured over to the dark side, right? And, when you have somebody like Trump, and why Trump sucks so bad is because he knows what these people, people who crave something more wholesome, something less, demonic. The problem is those people can't recognize and admit that their religion has basically screwed them over. The religion has failed them. And they gravitate to celebrities. And I've talked about this in the truth community. Every once in a while, some pseudo-celebrity, somebody who's been cast out like Roseanne Barr or Isaac Cappy or some of these other people, comes into the truth community, and all these people are like, oh, Hollywood sucks, and all these Hollywood people are demonic. Oh, wait, there's a celebrity, and they gravitate to those people. Like, they think those people are more important to them, and they're not. They're people who are Hollywood rejects, right? They didn't make it in Hollywood, and they're bitter and whatever, and they come into the truth community, and they're just like newbies. They're not developed souls. Like, they're people who wanted to be famous and realized that sucked, and now they're trying something else. So they're not like people who came in who already did that in some previous existence. People who already realized that money and power and those things aren't why you're here. And so they're not very far along in their spiritual journey, and they're not far along on being truthers. They're newbies to it, but immediately people gravitate to them. And that's what's happened with Trump on a bigger scale. Trump has thrown the truth community under the bus. Trump has no humility. He's a person without any sort of humility and no sense of service or duty. He's not a godly person. And people have put all that shit on him, and he's embraced it like he's a messiah figure. And he isn't that at all. He's the opposite of that. And so now you have a situation where the moral high ground is given to the demonic side. Like, I'm going to show you this ad they're playing. There's a girl she appeared at the DNC as a pro-abortion person. and where they're saying that the moral high ground, like the evil side, is saying that they're trying to take abortion away, and they're evil for doing that, right? Where everything gets flip-flopped and inverted. That's Satanism, where, good becomes evil and evil becomes good, and these things, right? And that's how the narrative is being, put out there. So let's go to the other voiceover, and at the end of the voiceover, I'll show you that. I'll start with that ad when I start doing the video clips. But, I'll come back to this when we get there. All right, so here's the voiceover I did yesterday. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This audio is probably going to go in my journey series as well, and maybe in a video with my other thing about time and space. So a few interesting things happened after I talked about time being the only real currency. Somebody posted a meme on Facebook that said something like, time is the only currency that you can't make any more of, or something like that. And then there was this guy, Adrian Wojnarowski, who works for ESPN as a basketball insider. And he retired from ESPN, and they read his tweet, and he said this: time isn't endless supply, and I want to spend mine in ways that are more personally meaningful. And so there were two things that were said within a day or two of me talking about time as currency, right? Like there was, I hadn't heard that. The idea came to me, but apparently other people had thought similar things, right? I mean, people think about time, and, from time to time, people think about something like that, right? Their time, especially as you get older and you realize, death is coming, right? As you pass a certain age, you have events in your life where you realize that death is a possibility. Either somebody close to you dies, or you have a near-death experience, or you have, some sort of a medical issue, and all of a sudden you think, oh, wow, yeah, I'm going to die, or, death is, part of life, and you think about that time is finite here, and, it's just something that people go through. And so with that, my wife and I are watching this show called Capture on Peacock, and I want to talk about the show more in a future video. We're not quite through with it. And it's about, they have this, video, they video everything in, Correction, I believe. It's called Correction, the show. No, it's actually called Capture. I just wanted to look it up and make sure. And they have 2 seasons about this, the spying, the overwhelming, the video surveillance system in England. It's got an interesting name too, and I can't remember it right now. It's not important. But part of it is there is a, this guy, these people have invented an algorithm to really successfully be able to figure out what people are going to do. Like with all the data that's out there and the sophistication of AI and algorithms, they have a pretty good idea what people are going to do. Like they just know, and it's getting better and better. They know personally and collectively what people are going to choose to do, right? And I was thinking about this already. So, this part of the show came up, and, I was thinking about this already, that this idea of a multiverse, right? People talk about the multiverse as a thing in the Marvel universe, where, there is multiple versions of you or in some sort of alternative reality based in choice points. Like every time you come to a choice point, you make multiple choices. And when you make these different choices, you go in different directions, right? Like there's timelines now. There's new timelines created. And you have a different version of yourself going through these different timelines. The timelines have been created by having, made choices, making more than one choice, which is not possible, right? Because when you make a choice, you make a choice. That's why you have choice points. There are choices you make, and you don't make more than one. You make one choice. You can go back and think, oh, what if I made that choice? What would my life be like? But that's just imagination. It's not real. you have these situations where you are choosing, one thing or another, and or multiple choices. You have oftentimes, like I said, there's one right choice. The life that you get right is the one where you make the choice that God wants you to make, right? Your soul wants you to make. Sometimes there's small choices, like you're at a buffet and you're gonna like see food, and you're making choices of the food you're gonna eat, and I mean, maybe you don't make the best choice there because you don't take it all that seriously. You're just picking one thing over another. You're choosing what you're going to eat at a restaurant or whatever. You're choosing, what you're going to wear for the day, like just all these things. When you're going to do this or if you're going to do this, and what you eat for breakfast, all the things that you do, right? There's choices like that, like choices of small choices. And then there's the big choices that really affect your life. Not that the small choices don't as well, because the small choices mount up, right? Do I floss my teeth today? Something like that, right? That leads to, maybe some kind of dental issue that leads to maybe some sort of medical issue, down the road, especially when there's, the choices mount up. But there's the small choices you make, and then there's big choices you make, right? And, the big choices have more of an effect on your, the choices that you make, that, who you're going to marry, what you're going to do for a career, these things, that lifestyle, where you're going to live, do I live in a city or do I live in a country, and these things. And, these choices have an overall effect on everything, right? These big choices affect everything in a, much more profound way. And in the Sajmarg system, the teachings that are there is that these choices are really kind of not choices. Like this is now backed up by the fact that they can predict what you're going to do. They could feed all of your data, all of your, choices you make on the internet, everything that they know about you. They collect all your data, all the spying stuff they do. They could collect all the, recorded conversations they record, because they're obviously doing that. Many of us have experienced this, where you're talking about something, like my wife and I go for a walk, and the only thing that we have is my phone. My phone is on me, and I come in, and something we talked about is recommended on Facebook. Like, how is that possible? Within minutes, right? Of us talking about it. And so many people said, yeah, they've had the exact same experiences. So you think about all the data they collect, and they run it through these, very developed, sophisticated algorithms and, AI bots, and they know what you're going to do. And if they know what you're going to do, then there is no real choice, right? Like, your choices are predictable. They're systematic. They're preordained, right? There's something where you are, you're just going to do this thing. Your tendencies are there, and somebody living a spiritual life has to break those patterns. Has to, have significant changes in those ways that people just make these. You become almost an automaton, and you're just going through, not really making choices. It's just everything's predictable, to where you start making choices that are, connected to your soul and God, where you now bring in, a higher authority to guide you through that process. And, I was able to do this in the Sajmark system. And, using your heart as an instrument, as a, as where you can, hear God's voice or your soul's voice, right? They're both basically the same thing in this scenario. The divinity within you is your soul, and your soul always wants to do what God wants to do, right? Your soul always will do what God wants to do. So if you give your soul a voice, or you find a way to connect to your soul, then you will make a decision that, God wants, doing this YouTube channel the way I did it, there's a point where I was really not wanting to do celebrity videos. And, I didn't want to, I knew I had to do the YouTube channel. I knew this was something I was supposed to do, so I had to deal with that, right? The things that, oftentimes that are not very palatable, and you're like, I don't want to do that. But there was, obviously benefit for me doing that, right? Something that I now have accepted it. It wasn't so bad. Like, it sucked in the beginning, doing the amount of stuff, because I don't care about that stuff, right? But, I had to connect with people. I had to do those things. And so when you have these choices, oftentimes the thing that you don't want to do or are scared to do or whatever it is. And, not like, something like in a daredevil way of being scared, but something that's uncertain and foreign and, puts you in a situation where you have to work harder and, it's not the easy way. It's not the easy choice. God's choice is often not the easy choice, right? It's the choice that you don't want to make, right? The idea that you're giving something up or you're committing to doing something that you don't, if you really want to commit to doing that, right? A lot of the choices with God are about commitment to something where you have to give of yourself more. You're in a situation where you have to, be responsible or be more giving or be more loving or, these things, right? Those are the choices that your soul wants you to make, right? And so to tie this back to the time and space audio that I did, this stuff I talked about with my brother and my ex and, various other people who do the Sizemore system, I don't feel like they ever surrendered their choice to the divinity within them. That's why these people are all failing to deal with the dodgy debacle. Because, when you don't think you ever make a mistake, right? Like, you don't think that you need to change, then you don't feel like you need help making choices. And this is, ties into Donald Trump too as well. Like Donald Trump is that guy, somebody who never thinks anything he does is wrong. And so there's no need to bring in a higher authority, people with that kind of narcissism, and people who are overly controlled and want to control things and don't want to face up to their mistakes, right? Don't want to admit to their mistakes internally. Doesn't matter what you do with other people. You can apologize, you can lie, you can deny. I mean, those are all choices in themselves, but as long as like you have to know, like you've screwed up or see your mistakes and see that you need to change things. And by changing the fundamental way that you perceive these choice points, by bringing in a higher authority and seeing them through the divinity within you, and then it becomes easy to make choices because God will help you make. If you ask, God will help you make the choices. But people who never ask because they don't think that they do anything wrong, they think that they're always right and always doing the right thing. I mean, you see people like that, and it sucks to be with them, right? Because they never change, and they just make the same mistakes over and over again, and everyone else suffers those mistakes, but they themselves never see it, and they just blame. They feel like victims. Like, why isn't the world cooperating? You see this with Trump is a great example. Why isn't the world cooperating? Doesn't the world know how great I am? They think everything's unfair because they think they don't look at the signs and the warnings and everything that's being told to them. Master Chargy, the third master of the Sizemore system, said something kind of brilliant about rich people. He said, rich people don't pray. He said, because if they did, they would realize that they have the resources to give and fix things, right? Like they don't, maybe they pray for more wealth or, they get cancer, they pray for God to, not real prayer. But if they prayed about, like, say, problems that happen in the world, they would realize that they could, give up some of the wealth that they're hoarding, really rich people, and change things for other people. Like they have the ability to make the world a better place by giving of what they are hoarding, right? Like anybody who doesn't want to give up what they have, it doesn't have to be, rich people. But if you start praying and you start opening up to God, and you start feeling compassion and empathy for other people, you realize that you could do things differently, right? And so they don't want to open up to God because once they did, they realize they would have to change and give shit up, right? Because they know that, the stuff that they're doing isn't okay with their souls and God. Like these people who are, actively going against the will of God by doing bad shit in the world. And, you know what I'm talking about. And once you open up to God, you have to face those things, right? And, I've experienced that through the meditation. When I do something wrong or make a mistake or, whatever it is, especially if I did something that would hurt somebody else's heart, I would feel it. I was always feeling it my whole life, but I didn't really, it was blocked to whatever extent. But when I started meditating, I became more sensitive to those things, right? And more aware of it. And I could see, how my behavior affected other people. And, it bothered me. And, it would linger. And, I'd do these nighttime cleaning and, do the meditation and it would just come up. Because when you meditate and you sit there and you reflect, things that you did wrong just, appear before you. Like, you feel them. And, you have regret and you have, these feelings that go with it, right? And, I wish I didn't do that. And, maybe you start thinking about changing and becoming a person that, doesn't do things like that, right? And so once you open up to God, that's what happens. Like you no longer can deny and, push away things that, that are mistakes and things that you need to change, right? And people have developed, egos have developed these ways of pushing everything away and, changing creating blockage points to the feedback they're getting, right? The world is telling them, hey, you're doing this wrong. It's hurting us. If you go and, like, if somebody that Donald Trump hurt came up and said, this is what your words did to me, he would have a way of, denying that and not accepting it, right? If, like, he's, right now there's this thing with the Haitians, he's, making up this stuff about Haitian people. And let's say somebody did a hate crime against them because they were inspired by Trump's, rhetoric, right? I mean, you could say the same thing about the Democrats and their lies and their, whatever it is. And the person that got hurt came up and confronted them, right? Like when I worked as a counselor with teenage sex offenders, so they're part of the Pathways program was victim reunification. And if there was like a sibling and, somebody in the house that the person had victimized, they had to have these meetings and take full responsibility and, blame for whatever had happened. And they had to listen to the person, usually like a younger sibling or somebody, tell them how that it affected them, right? And, how their behavior affected them. And, if the person's open to it, they feel like shit, right? It's really hard for them to do that because they're sex offenders already feel a great deal of shame, like they're the lowest of the low, right? In prison, they're the worst, right? Amongst criminals, they're the worst, and they, feel like crap about what they've done. Plus, they've often been victims themselves as kids, so they're perpetrating, like an abusive cycle and whatever. But they do this now with prisoners as well, that they have to meet the victims of the crime and hear what they did, how they affected them, right? And people who are incapable of receiving that and hearing that, right? There's people who just never will be able to feel anything and from other people, and they're just blocked off, and they've created all these walls and defense mechanisms and ways of not receiving the feedback that's being given to them by God, because you're constantly being warned about the error of your ways, like things are just being shown to you. As a collective people, we're being warned, and then as individuals, but people just keep on doing the same, bad shit. People running this system, and it's because they're oblivious to, the feedback they should be receiving, especially their hearts, which are cocooned in, like a hard spiritual substance that prevents them from feeling empathy or compassion or love and these things, right? People who are just, being hedonistic and, just narcissistic and selfish and, are sensory stimulation and, pleasure-based people. People are seeking power and just, all the things that like that, right? Seeking some sort of materialistic, gratification of, like without, any sense of self-improvement and having that acknowledging that there's a divine reason they're here and there's a soul's purpose and just, these sorts of things, which I talk about so much. But yeah, so that's why there's no multiverse, because we do make choices. We make choices all the time. But in some ways, the choices are preordained. So it's the way that we go about making the choices is as important, right? The way that we go about our experiences. The experiences will all come in one form or another. We'll have these tests. We'll have these interactions. Like there's just, another way to think about it is deja vu. Or people who see, things happening in the future. If you have a vision of the future, Like, how would you have that if there's, any chance that that wouldn't happen, right? Like a deja vu moment is something where, this moment was going to happen and you have an experience of that, like a premonition of like, oh yeah, I knew this was coming, right? And there's all these things like that are there because the events are going to unfold. It's just how you go about them. Like it's, how you perceive them, how you, formulate your internal world in such a way that there's some, higher consciousness of doing what God wants you to do, like connecting to God. And that's the big thing. Like people don't want God as a part of their life because they don't want to make choices that God would want them to make, right? Your ego finds a way to exclude God from the choice process because your ego wants to make choices that God would never make. But anyways, let's move on here. Okay, so let's start here.
I've never slept a full night in my entire life. I was 5 years old when my stepfather abused me for the first time. I just felt like I was alone on a planet with a monster. I was 12 when he impregnated me. I just remember thinking I have to get out of my skin.
So this is a horrible thing, right? It's hard to watch. And, seeing the pictures of her when she's 12 and thinking about that, like that's what they're making you do, right? They're making you think about her stepfather doing that to her when she's 12 years old, which happened, right? Which is, that part is reality, and that stuff happens. Like I worked in these treatment centers, and this stuff happens all the time because human beings suck, right? It's horrible. It's a horror show. This is a horror movie. This is a nightmare. Right? This girl's life is a nightmare, and it'll never be great. Like it's hard to come back from something like that, right? And this kind of abuse has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And it'd be one thing if they were saying, all right, we have a plan to get rid of this type of abuse. I mean, taking a look at our society and human beings in general, like how would you stop something like this? Like there's ways to do it. Like I wrote a book about it. I talk about this in terms of the cleaning process and the Sajmark system, in terms of human beings evolving past these animalistic and depraved tendencies and things like this. But they're not doing that. They're not talking about getting rid of this horrific type of behavior. But they're telling you this to pitch abortion, right? So they're giving you this horrible story. And they're linking this criminal, this, demonic person that's doing this to this girl, to Trump and the lack of an abortion. That's what they're going with this, which is extremely manipulative and evil, right?
I can't be me right now. Like, this can't be it. I didn't know what to do. I was a child. I didn't know what it meant to be pregnant at all. But I had options. Because Donald Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, girls and women all over the country have lost the right to choose.
So this horrible thing is going on, not just to her, but women and young women and boys all over the country and the world, right? Where adults who are sexually attracted to kids do these sort of things, right? And that's, it causes so much harm to not only the people this happens to for generations, because this behavior is passed on from generation to generation. I'm kind of an expert at this because I worked in treatment centers with kids who were acting out and had been sexually offended and then offended other people, right? Other kids. And so this is something that's a cycle of abuse. And it's a horrible thing. And my ex, she's not a credible person, but her story was that she was abused this way by her dad since she was maybe a toddler. She didn't get pregnant. She didn't have this sort of a story, but she was completely messed up. And I saw the results of that type of behavior on somebody and lots of people. Like I experienced what this kind of behavior does to people. And, you can't even calculate what it does to society. You can't even begin to factor in what it does to society. And, the prisons are littered with people who have been abused either physically or sexually. And this kind of behavior that gets passed on. It's one of the main evils in our society, right? And, everybody kind of knows it. My ex is abuse story and whatever she went through affected me, was traumatic for me, and even more so probably my kids. And my daughter's suicide, which I think I mentioned in the beginning of this video, in the introduction, was connected to that. Like her being, her self-harming, my ex self-harmed. Like every time I had an argument with my ex, I had to go hide the knives. She would get the knives. Like there was one time she got a knife, and like she had cut herself and when she was in college and things like this. So this was 20 years later. She was in her 40s, and she was cutting herself, and she had attempted suicide twice in college, at least once, as far as I know. This was her story, and she was put on a psychiatric hold, right? And my daughter picked up on these behaviors. My daughter started to cut herself and these things, which, put the ideas in her head. She would threaten suicide as well. She saw somebody who threatened suicide as a way to control other people's behaviors. And this was tied directly to her, treatment by her parents, my exes. And it was passed down, and it affected a future generation. And so, that's just like one person's story, or, one story that the effects on one person, and that, that effect of that behavior, how it affects their kids and other people, right? Like how many people was she, did she negatively affect because of her behavior? And so, her behavior that came from this other behavior that she learned from both her parents, because her mom was, complicit in this, right? So that's the real problem. And abortion doesn't solve that fucking problem, right? Abortion doesn't do anything for the real problem. Abortion doesn't stop any of the real things from happening. It's just, prevents you from having a baby that comes from you being sexually abused, right? And I guess that's something. It's something to this girl, obviously, but that doesn't fix the problem, not for her or for future young women in her situation. And it needs to be eradicated. And there's a way to eradicate these things through spiritual upliftment, where people embrace their higher side. People who really want to, aspire to be something better. And a lot of these people do, because they know they're the dregs of society. A lot of these sex offenders do. There's a story that I read where this guy was in prison, and they were going to let him out of prison. And he didn't want to come back in. And so he asked for an apple, like he was about to be paroled. This is a lifelong sex offender. And he took an apple in his mouth, and somehow got a hold of a razor blade. This is like in Washington, D.C. And he cut his nuts off. And he bit the apple to absorb the pain, because he knew that as soon as he left prison, he was going to offend some kid again. And he didn't want to go back to prison. It's sort of a selfish thing, and maybe he just didn't want to be that guy anymore. But that's a physical way. But there's ways to cleanse this stuff, through spiritual cleaning, the process that's used in Sagemark's system and these other types of, spiritual like techniques and things, if people really want them, if they really want to get rid of these deviant tendencies, which they can, just like with being an addict. You can get rid of your alcoholism and your addictions and things like that. But you really have to want to, and that's part of the problem, right? But that has nothing to do with abortion. Like her situation has nothing to do with abortion, because this bad thing happened because it's a systemic problem and a problem with human beings. And this thing that happened to her when she's 12 years old, and before that, this sexual abuse that's happening, right, is a horrible thing. But abortion doesn't make it better. Like abortion solves the problem of the pregnancy. She's too young to have a baby. She's 12 years old and she shouldn't be pregnant. And, that just shouldn't happen. And she's not ready to have a baby, and she's not in a situation where the baby can be, in that baby would be completely screwed over. A 12-year-old mom in an abusive situation. What if that's a baby girl, right? And this predator is still there. And it's a bad situation, right? I can understand why you want to get rid of the baby. She didn't choose to have the baby, right? But it comes down to, like I always say, when life begins, which is conception. And you're now in a situation where you're murdering a fetus, which is a person, right? fetus is just a human being. And there's no difference between murdering a baby inside of you or a baby or a full-blown grown person outside of you. Murder is murder. And it doesn't make the situation better, right? You're adding a murder to a rape, basically, right? Like you're adding something, another evil to an already evil thing. And, the whole thing is completely fucked, right? It's a bad situation. But that's what it is. Like, it's not, and I'm not saying that abortion, I'm not a Roe v. Wade person. I'm not saying any of these things. Like, I don't care what people do. I mean, it's up to them, like this girl or anybody else, because she could still get an abortion illegally or go to a country where it's legal. And so I'm not about any of these kind of things, right? It's for each person to decide. I mean, ultimately, it's about each pregnant woman to decide, but you have to know what it is, which is murder. Like, you're going in there, and it might look like it's solving your problem, but it's still murder, right? And there's spiritual consequences for that, and there's psychological consequences for that. And, thinking that it's not cancer, it's not getting rid of a tumor, it's not some benign operation. There's a soul attached to this baby. The soul is with you when you're pregnant. You can feel the presence of the soul. Like, even if you miscarried, women can feel the presence of their soul before they miscarry, and it's depressing. There's depression there and things. You feel like a sense of loss. And so you have to know all the information, is all I'm saying, right? And a society that has to, bring a level of consciousness where this girl's 12 years old and she's freaked out. She's in a horrible situation. She's in a state of shock, and she's in a state of trauma. And so she can't even think clearly, and 12-year-olds can't even think. 18-year-olds can't even think clearly. 25-year-olds can't think. You're a young person. You're a young dummy. And if you're in a situation like this, it's horrible. But for them to manipulate this situation like Trump is the evil one, and that Trump and this, abusive stepfather who's, like a scumbag, they're both scumbags, and they're together hurting women, right? Whereas, the reality is you're not telling these girls and women the truth about abortion and the fact that life begins at conception, because that's the truth that you would have to say. Like, if there was knowledge that this is like if you said, all right, you're going to murder your fetus, like, you just got to be aware of it, because you're going to realize that at some point. You're going to feel it. Whether she has or not, or whether, whatever this thing is here, you're going to feel it. Like, you just will at some point, and there's going to be consequences for it, right? Whatever those consequences are. And some of those things will be, how you feel about yourself inside, right? And all the people who are involved in this feel those same consequences, because it's, again, is this backed by divinity? Is this backed by your soul? You don't get pregnant without a soul choosing to be associated with the baby, creating the baby inside of you, right? Let's wrap this one up.
Even for rape or incest, Donald Trump did this. He took away our freedom.
Your freedom, you didn't have freedom. I mean, again, this whole, making it look like Kamala is the hero, and this is, Donald Trump is the evil. Of course, he is evil, but these policies and the policies of abortion, it's a lot more complex than they're leading on, right? It's just not some easy thing that you do. It's not some easy solution. It's something where, you're taking a bad. The song that they were playing there was Billie Eilish's "The Party's Over," right? I mean, after this girl tells this horrific story, and they're making Donald Trump to be the bad guy, but in reality, they're manipulating the audience and using this girl's painful story to, push for something that has, it's more complicated than they're leading you on, right? There's more to the girl's story here, because she was a minor. She's 12 years old, and her mom, who was somehow complicit in this, because she married some scumbag and probably knew what was going on to some extent, right? Like, there's more to the story. And to get an abortion, she would have had to have some sort of parental consent and awareness, and the authorities would have to get involved then, knowing that the stepfather impregnated her. It's all this stuff. There's layers to this thing, right? And, with all those layers, it's not addressing the real problem, like I said earlier. they're just, the solution for her, the immediate solution was to terminate, get rid of, kill the fetus, because she's a 12-year-old girl and all that implies. And so that makes sense to whatever extent. Like, it's hard to say you have to carry this baby and your life's over. You're 12 years old, and now who knows what's the stepfather possibly in jail now, right? I mean, they would have the DNA of the stepfather. So I'm not going to look up the rest of this girl's story, but the thing's a fucking mess, and abortion's only a small part of it, and it's not the solution to any of it, right? Like, it deals with the girl's, inability to raise a child, and that part, yeah, sure. But it doesn't address the societal issues and all these other things, right? And then to exploit this girl's story that way and, play Billie Eilish's song there at the end, like, it's just so icky. They're just so icky, right? I mean, I talked about Trump and being manipulative and just, being so scumbaggery about saying the Haitians eat cats. This is like the same level of that. And, they're trying to claim the higher authority. Like, having an abortion to solve this problem, but doing nothing about, how to stop sexual abuse. They're doing nothing to stop that, right? And don't even have a plan to do it. Neither one of these people has a plan to stop sexual abuse. Kamala says she prosecuted offenders, but that hasn't stopped it. That's after the fact. And so, really taking a deep look at why human beings do shit like this and how we can elevate from that kind of behavior. No one's even talking about that, right? And then there's this here. So I've seen bits and pieces of her Oprah interview, and it's a disaster. She's more herself. It's the first time she's herself. She's gone off script. And this is what happens when she goes off script.
I think for far too long on the issue of gun violence, some people have been pushing a really false choice to suggest you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, and I'm in favor of assault weapons bans, universal background checks, red flag laws.
When you said you have guns, no, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes.
Again, like, she said that stuff with that accent.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes.
Okay, so, let's let this thing play out. But there's something that she's missing here.
I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
Yeah, probably not, because it's being played all over the place. She's Trump. Like this, the first part is her being Trumpish and her being like this is off-putting. She's so unlikable. See, I can't show you the whole, I can't sit through the Oprah interview. When she's being herself and she's letting her hair down, she's just so repulsive. I mean, it's much worse than when she's even reading a script, which is in itself off-putting, right? But she's just a nightmare. And so this is her laying her hair down, and she's a gaffe magnet. She says things that should cost her the election. But Trump is so bad, and Trump is, the whole thing that he's doing. And, the media is so turned because of Trump, right? They've been allowed to turn completely because Trump is Trump. And that her being a Trump herself or being a Biden and doing these things, making all these mistakes, she can't blame senility or Parkinson's. She just really, says stupid shit, right? She needs to read a script, because when she's not reading a script, she's abhorrent. And the Democrats realized this in 2020 when they didn't want to vote for her. When she was herself, people were like, oh, we don't like this bitch. Like, and she, she does this stuff, but like, unfortunately, or fortunately for her, unfortunately for everyone else, Trump is such a catch-all for all these things that this is kind of goes ignored. Like, the Republicans are putting this out there. Maybe some independents see it. But there's flawed logic. Let me get to the end of this thing.
But my staff will deal with that later.
But you have been a gun owner for a while.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
But here's my point, Oprah, is that
Okay. NBC News is putting this out like that is going to help her, like they think that's a good thing. Okay, so there's just flawed logic in what she's saying. She said if somebody comes in her house, they're getting shot, right? But what if that person has an AR-15, right? What if that person has some sort of, a better gun, right? Because AR-15s are being demonized because they're better. Like, if somebody has an AR-15, what I was told by, one of these gun people, an ex-military person, is, you have your handgun so you can get to your AR-15. Like if you're in a shootout, if someone's breaking into your house and they're also armed, and which could be the case for Kamala. I mean, now she has Secret Service protection, whatever, right? But if someone was to break into her house and, in her situation, it might be somebody who wants to do her harm who has, one of these assault rifles. And that's why people have them. Because, if somebody else has that, again, I'm not a gun person. Don't like them. They're killing machines. It's just a stress that you have when you have these things around. Like you have this killing machine. Just when you drive a car too. Like there's a stress to driving a car. Most people forget about it, but you can kill yourself or somebody else in a car every time you get out of a car. People are dying in cars every day, right? People are dying from guns every day. And so a lot of times the people are dying from guns, there's self-inflicted wounds, like people getting shot by their own guns, people mishandling, being unsafe with guns, right? Kids getting access to guns they shouldn't, things like this, right? It's a stress. It's something where you have this, it does one thing and it hurts people, it hurts and kills people, right? It's designed to do that. But if you're having guns in your house so that you can defend yourself against other people, people who are trying to steal your stuff or harm you or whatever it is, people who are, criminals, and there's a possibility of a shootout, then you need to have, it's like an arms race, right? There's an arms race going on between you and and criminals. But if there's a breakdown in society, and this is the real reason for me that, you have to, consider having weapons, right? I'm not telling anybody what to do because, there's different pathways. But if society breaks down, we know what happens. And guns are like a necessity. And when societies go into a situation where there's no rule of law and people are starving and, there's just panic and fear and, people can do whatever they want because there's no consequences for it, then it becomes a necessity. And again, I'm not advocating one thing or another because everyone has to make their own personal choice. But if you're going to live through an apocalyptic situation, there's going to think about this ad that she ran where this girl's stepfather is just a piece of shit, horrible person. And there's, millions of people just like that. And so if just 1% or 10% of the people are like that in your town, there's like people who are going to go to the dark side. These people who maybe because of threat of law and the police department, their fellow citizens and all these things, they're kept in check because of self-preservation. But when there isn't any, there isn't any rule of law, there isn't any police, these people are able to do whatever they want. And if they are, are armed, and you aren't, look what happened to Native Americans. Look at what happened to every group that, came against armed forces. The armed people oppressed them, turned them into slaves. All the things that happen, right? When one side is armed and the other side isn't. And so that's the reason for it. It isn't for any other reason. Like the thought of the government being able to push people around. Think about what governments do when they're up against unarmed people, because it's such an advantage, right? Like they're saying, like an armed person can go into a school and wipe out 20, 30 people or more. An armed person with one of these assault weapons is worth what, 100 people? How many people would take to unarmed people would take to overcome one person with an AR-15? And so that would be the reason to have these, because you don't trust the government to, governments abuse people when they're, they always turn on, the military always will turn on the populace and start abusing them, right? Take liberties with their, with their women and kids or whatever it is, right? Turn people into slaves, steal their food, bully them, right? You're able to bully people if you're armed and they're not. And that's historically played out. And so everything she says here is a contradiction. She sees the need for guns, but you're going to have an inferior one. Like you're saying that you have this thought that someone's going to break into your house and you're going to pull out your, mini little handgun and shoot them, right? But what do they have? And so you have this thought that you're safe because you're armed with something, right? It still fires bullets, but, if you're up against something with the superior, bigger bullets and the ability to fire faster and shoot from a farther distance accurately, then you're fucked, right? You're in an inferior position. You might as well have a slingshot, right? Because, that's, in fact, you're acknowledging that because you want to take these things away. You're pro-gun, right? I don't understand the position of saying you can only have these guns, right? Why? If you're going to, they're all sucky. Every gun can kill somebody. They all do the same thing. The restriction just seems arbitrary and stupid. I think guns suck. Guns shouldn't even be there. People aren't able to handle guns. People aren't able to handle nuclear weapons. We have very immature, mentally ill people. Most of society is, so low functioning. The people who run the world are the worst, and they have control over all these weapons of mass destruction, and yet they exist. So, again, there's just a lack of logic in all of these things. It'd be great when guns don't exist, and that could happen when people don't have access to killing machines, just even the short term. My daughter was given a handgun, and she was on LSD, and she had a bad trip, and she killed herself. I didn't know about the drugs part, but I was like, who in their right mind would give my daughter a gun? She was just, she wasn't stable and very impulsive. And, I don't think it was, it wasn't registered to her. So one of her friends or somebody gave her a gun, and then she went and, she was on a variety of drugs, and she freaked out and shot herself because, all these things. And there was issues there already. But without the gun, she would be probably alive today because it's harder to kill yourself without one, right? I'm not a fan of guns, and I don't really have much faith in people. And so those are a bad combination. But, you can't have it one-sided. You can't, if there's going to be an arms race, you got to have an arms race. You can't have it where, you're in a situation where the bad people have the guns, right? And there's a lot of bad people who have guns even legally, and that's just the way it is. So that's our society. And there's no reining that back. And if they don't, they'll get guns illegally. The criminals will find ways to get guns. In fact, they want guns that can't be traced back to them, murderous people. And so this guy, this guy that, the newest fake Trump shooting, he had a gun where the serial numbers were scraped off. And so, her logic is completely flawed. These two things are tied together, the ad with the girl and her saying this on Oprah Winfrey. She wants to shoot people, break into her house. She just wants you to have an inferior weapon to do it, right? It's okay to shoot people. Hey, if they break into her house, you should have a gun, just an inferior one. You limit it, something where, even in terms of the difference of caliber. Because when you're talking about handguns, the difference in the size of the bullet is, and the kind of bullets that you're using, right? In terms of these hollow points and things like that, these bullets that just wreak havoc on the human body. And so there's all these factors involved. The kind of ammunition that you're using is important. There's, these bullets that go through, flap jackets, go through bulletproof vests and things, right? And so, go through, they can even go through cars. They're just, the superior, ammo. There's all these things that are involved in that, right? When they arm the military, they have the top-notch, the best equipment, right? For a reason, because you have an advantage. In anything, any kind of conflict, you want an advantage, right? When you're setting up a blocking scheme in football, you want to have the leverage. They talk about leverage all the time in football, whether it be in terms of pass coverage and covering a receiver, and the leverage and also the angle in which you take to tackle somebody and chase them down, right? And you have these big guys who are blocking, that outweigh the defensive players sometimes by hundreds of pounds, and you get a big guy and a small guy, and he's in a better physical position, and they are able to block, based in the amount of numbers of blockers to potential tacklers, and that's how a running game works, right? It's like you're trying to create an advantage for your either by physical weight and physical strength, or also by the fact that you have a plan and you know what's going to happen with the play you're calling. Your defense is reacting to your play, all this stuff. And they're, having a physical advantage in any of these things, right? I saw this video that went around, I think maybe on Facebook or something. And it was MMA fighting. It was like in Russia, but it was 5-on-5. And like eventually one guy would knock out his opponent, and then he'd go and help one of his teammates, and it'd be 2-on-1. And eventually there would be like 3 or 4 people beating the shit out of one guy because they just worked that way, right? Because once they had that advantage, like the first team to knock somebody else out, and that guy then becomes a 2-on-1 situation, and then they take care of that guy, then it's, they have more guys left, right? There's when you have more people, you're usually going to win the fight. You're usually going to win when you're better prepared, better trained, better armed, and so there's advantages, right? And she's saying, well, it's okay for you to own a gun. It's okay for you to defend yourself. You're just limited to it just doesn't make any sense, right? There's a reason for it. They want you to be limited because of, one of the reasons they can't get away with a lot of stuff in America is because there's 450 million guns here. It's like 1.5, 1.5 guns per person. And there's a lot of people don't own any guns, so there's people who own multiple guns. And the superiority of these guns and the ex-military who are part of the populace now, who have been trained, it's a deterrent to the government pushing for certain things. That's why they're so big on grabbing the guns, right? Because once the government has an unarmed population, America's lifestyle is going down quickly. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so I want to revisit this thing with Gwen Walz. Gwen Walz, the beard wife of this dude, Gary Walz, or Johnny Walz, what's his name? And so there is a little bit of a development here. This is, to me, the most fascinating story. I mean, Joe Biden being ousted for being senile, there's, that's going to be the big story of this whole election because it's unique. But, there's still other things, right? The fake shootings and all of it. But this is my favorite thing. This crazy-ass boop. Let's watch it again here.
But I kind of liked it when she did this. Turn the page. You like that?
You like that?
Okay, so I need you to be with me and practice with me. What are we
That's funny. He laughed.
going to do? We're going to turn the page. Oh, pretty good. Do it again. We're going to turn the page. And we're going to turn the page. All right, so I'm going to be watching you because when I see Wisconsin, and I'm one watching nationally on TV because this is a pretty important place, and Minnesota helped you practice with this. You just show me this. Turn the page, right? Turn the page. And you know what else that looks like?
What does it look like, Gwen? Gwen, what does it frickin' look like?
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Donald Trump. We are turning the page. 52 days and we are turning the page. 52 days and it is bye-bye, Donald Trump.
So there's some thought that went into this, right? I assume they checked her speech. Like someone had to sign off on this thing. And also they had to sign off on letting her speak. So the development is, my wife sent me this maybe a day or two after I posted this video. So this is a close-up of her eyes. And you guys remember when she first displayed herself, I'm like, oh my God, she's crazy. She has those crazy eyes.
Bye-bye, Donald Trump. We are turning the page. 52 days and we are turning the page. 52
Okay, so she is crazy. Like, she is batshit crazy, which we covered before. So there's a lot here I want to say. So the first part is, the eyes are the window of the soul. And when you look at somebody's eyes, like a spiritual person, when you see somebody who's like a spiritually developed person, and sometimes someone could be a complete a-hole, but you look at their eyes and you're like, oh my God, that person's really soft, right? That person, like inside, they have they're evolved. And they might have a bad personality and, but their eyes tell you something else, right? Like they might be gruff or, somebody who's just not approachable or whatever it is. Like, various personality, things that are not what you value in a personality. But you look at their eyes and you're like, wow, that person, like you can just see it. And you can have, spiritual experience when you see somebody like a saint and you look at their eyes. And like there's, there's auras and there's ways of telling just through your visual interpretation. And, that's, and like I said, oftentimes it doesn't go with their personality. Other times you could have a really nice person, but you look at their eyes and they just scare you. Sometimes it's just the eyes themselves, the color of it. But you can see selfishness in people's eyes. You can just see, who that person is in terms of the interpretation of the way that it's a way to read somebody. Like their eyes is one of the telling things. And then there's people whose eyes just are unfocused and you can tell they're crazy. Doesn't mean they're violent. Like I don't think Gwen Walz is violent. But you don't know like they're definitely glitching out. Like their eyes are just an indication of an unfocused and a clouded brain, right? And when I saw her eyes, I'm like, oh my God, that bitch is crazy. And I'm not talking about, everybody can be diagnosed with something. I'm not talking about psychological diagnosis. Human beings are really fucked up, and you can go to the DSM-5 or 4, whatever it is, 5, and find a diagnosis for every person. And people have been messed up psychologically and, their personalities, their egos. But I'm talking about something else where there's just, like when I say crazy, I mean not just like a pathology, but the hardwiring's off or something's off, some kind of glitch out. And you can't trust those people's decision making. You just can't. Like I can think of a few people offhand. There was a guy who used to, I worked in a racquetball club that was also, it had an area to work out, like lift weights. And one of my friends got a job in the weightlifting part of it. It was in a town my brother lived in, so I was kind of a known person. My brother was kind of a famous person in that town, right, in Connecticut. And so a lot of the people that were in there, like people I knew or whatever it was. And there was a guy, and he lived kind of by my brother. He'd sometimes ride his bike by his house. Well, he lived at the racquetball club. Like his family lived near my brother. But the boss of the racquetball club, the guy who owned it, just hired, like there was a woman, like a housewife who was a member of the club. Her ex-husband was in there, and he was a real treat. And he just hired this untrained, unprofessional woman, nice lady, right? But she, didn't know what she was doing, and she broke a lot of like laws, like not just rules but laws. And this guy with the crazy eyes, he was a short guy, but he was wearing these like tank top T-shirts, and he loved to do curls. Like he'd come into the weight room and there'd be like these 50-pound dumbbells. He goes, I'm going to curl those fuckers. But he was small. He was like, probably 5'1", 5'2", and he had these crazy eyes. And there was an attic, and he was living in the attic of this place, and it wasn't zoned for being residents, right? Everyone was supposed to keep it hush hush. And he'd come in, and I kind of enjoyed talking to him because I like crazy people. But it's not someone you would trust in terms of their judgment. And you can just tell in their eyes, you're like, this person is, I mean, they might surprise you, but there isn't a lot of, coherence there. And it could happen from drugs, or they can be born that way, but there's something malfunctioning there. And it's happening with Gwen Walz. And, I don't know why you would ever marry someone like that. Like, I mean, look at how crazy she is doing this thing. They didn't let her speak at the DNC, and I'm not sure why they're letting her speak here, right? You know, she's a school teacher. The story is that she and Tim Walz shared a room, and he's loud and weird and kind of gay and like whatever's going on with him, right? I mean, he's just he's not your average person. He's got that Richard Simmons thing going on, and she was sharing a classroom with him. Like she was teaching her students, and they had a divider, but not a wall, like some sort of visual divider. And he's on the other side shouting and running around and being all excited, and she's doing crazy shit like she's doing. I mean, what kind of school is that? And they hooked up, and I don't know, this is the kind of person that you never know what they're going to do. Someone like with these crazy eyes, Stepford Wives eyes, and you can't make contact with them. Like when they get lost and crazy, and you can see it with their son, you just can't make contact with them. Like you can't reach them, right? When they're just gone, and you could see that with this woman. I mean, you're gonna wake up one day and your dick's gonna be in a jar, like you don't know what she's gonna do, and they let her go out there and speak publicly, and what job is there? I mean, what is it? Bring your spouse to work day? Like, what job is there that's out there that you bring your spouse and your spouse does something related to your job, right? Like, I mean, some people, their spouses work in the same field, but most times not. And this woman isn't a trained politician. I mean, she's used to speaking to high school kids, but she is just weird and batshit crazy. I mean, I should go look for the whole speech. Let me go look for the whole speech here. Because, why not? Woo! Woo!
It is great to be with Mayor Payne. Where's Mayor Payne?
Where is she? Use those crazy fucking eyes. Use those crazy bitch eyes and find Mayor Payne.
Oh, great to be with you. Right over there.
Right there.
Secretary Godlinski. Did I say that right? Thank you. And most of all, over 1,200 of our neighbors and friends.
This woman's got a vote with a Tide shirt on it. A Tide emblem. Woo!
And what a joy it is to return to the shores of Lake Superior.
Whoa, look at her go.
We share a lot here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, right? One of the things is that beautiful lake shore. And that reminds me of how much we have in common and other things that we share. More so than just cold winters.
Oh, yeah, she's got jokes, Gwen.
Right? Yeah. They're brutal, some would say. We share the same values.
No way. Wisconsin and Minnesota, the same values? Look at this guy. Frowny McFrowny face here. Woo! Look at this dude. Look at this dude with the Tide thing. That dude is a new way forward.
Now, I want you to know if you needed me to, I would come and shovel your driveway. And I bet you'd come and shovel mine.
That's the kind of people that we will go and shoveling at each other's driveways. Has anybody been shoveling your driveway? Because this guy's hitting for the other team. Is there anybody shoveling your driveway, Gwen?
Or we give each other kids' rides to hockey practice or band practice or whatever we needed, right?
That's the kind of people we are. We drive each other's kids around and shovel each other's driveways.
Because here's what we do. We look out for each other.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's good, Gwen. You're nailing it.
And these values form the foundation of our lives together. And that's how Vice President Harris and my husband Tim were raised.
Tim, there you go. They were raised like that. She was raised in a college town. She didn't shovel anybody's driveways. They didn't drive anybody else's kids to school.
Thank you. They both come from middle-class communities. Kamala was raised by a working mom in Oakland, California. And Tim grew up...
Not Oakland. Be honest. Berkeley. She was born in the Oakland hospital, but she never lived in Oakland. She lived in Berkeley her whole time. And it was a college town because her mom was. I mean, it's just that's not accurate.
A small town of 400 in rural Nebraska.
Nebraska, that's some great state there. That's where he gets his frown from.
And both Kamala and Tim
That's where he learned to take it in the boop.
learned the value of hard work and common good, just like all of you. And you know what? That's how I was raised too. The community I was raised in was twice the size of Tim's.
That's so funny. Like I didn't see that coming. When she said twice the size, I didn't think it was going to be Tim's twice the size. It was going to be twice the size of Oakland. No one saw that coming, Gwen.
And you know what? My sisters and I were raised in this small little town in southwestern Minnesota by two school teachers. And guess what? My
They were crazy as fuck.
sisters are here with me today.
Okay, let's see their eyes. I want to see their sisters. Show them. Expand the camera over there.
And guess what?
They're crazy as F.
They're teachers.
No way. It's her thing that she does with her body. She leans in. Look at this. She gets a crazy face. She leans in. She leans in. She leans into the mic, and then she sits back like, I just nailed it.
Guess what again?
Oh.
My sister-in-law is from Wisconsin.
Oh. And she does that thing. She leans in, gives a look.
And guess what?
What? Chicken butt.
She's here today.
Whoa, no way. That's crazy that she would come to this thing, your big event here in Wisconsin.
And guess what?
Chicken butt.
She's a teacher.
I never saw that coming either.
We're good at that game.
We're good at it.
Our parents taught us the value of a hard day's work, how to balance the budget, and most of all, how to lend a helping hand to our neighbors in need and accept help from our neighbors when we needed it too. All the things that someone like Donald Trump
Boo. Boo.
grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth.
He got a silver spoon right in his fucking mouth. His whole life he had a silver spoon. He couldn't even do anything because he had this silver spoon. He couldn't even speak because he had a silver spoon in his mouth to the time he was 12.
You just never understand. So I'm excited today because you're going to get to hear from Tim.
Tim's going to speak. That's a real treat.
But first, I'm going to just tell you a few things about us and about why we're here. So I'd like to just tell you how we met. Is that all right?
Well, first of all, Tim is gay.
We were both teaching in the same school district in Nebraska. And he was teaching very good history, social studies, geography. And do you know what I was teaching?
How to be a crazy bitch?
English.
English, that's right. That was my second choice.
But we even shared a classroom. And that classroom was an old choir room because our school was pretty short on resources and space. And so they put
And intelligence and quality teachers.
the divider right down the middle of that old choir room. And Tim was on one side and I was on the other side. And I have
And that's continued.
to tell you that his class was a little louder than mine. But
My class was crazier.
every day I knew that there was excitement and enthusiasm in that classroom.
They're just having a gay old time over there.
And what Tim and I understood about each other, and the first thing that I think we loved about each other, was that we both shared the value of education. Yes?
You're education people.
And we both understood that every single student mattered.
They all do. They just all matter. They matter. These people just matter. One student after the other, they matter. Woo!
Every day I watched him coaching and encouraging his students, and he tried to help them all succeed.
Boom. That was a good hand movement. Watch this hand movement. Watch your hand movement right here. Watch it.
To help them all
Oh, boom.
succeed.
Nailed it.
You see, Tim can't help but see the potential in everyone, and I think that's remarkable.
You know, like she's the kind of person that's running away from what's lurking inside of herself, right? You know, there are people who've created this, illusionary world and persona. I mean, sometimes it's people who don't drink or use, and maybe she's on some sort of psychological medication. But like, whatever it's preventing, there's a wall between something deep and dark lurking inside of her. I mean, it could be like depression or just, whatever it is. Like there's just this veneer, and that's why you can't make contact with people like that, right? Because they're not, congruent with their inner world or what's going on inside of them. Like they've walled off some sort of trauma or something, or whatever it is. I mean, look, they're both sad freaking people. Like he's always wearing this frown, this guy. Like he's just always such a dour MNFer, and she's just got this crazy, painful expression on her face constantly, right? I mean, someone's all about family and helping kids and community. They're miserable fucks. And who's this person? Like, what is going on in Wisconsin? Like, it's like, is this Wisconsin or, people who were voted most likely to be a serial killer? Woo! There you go. Give her a headbutt on the shoulder.
And he wants everyone to have a chance to reach it, and that is a commitment that I know he and Vice President Harris share. They believe in everyone, the potential and the opportunity for everyone. That's big.
It's big. It's a big thing. It's huge.
Big.
Woo! Look at that look. Like, this was so sad. Look at this another frown. Look at her look there.
So I'm excited to see the future that they want to build where everyone is included and where everyone who works hard has a chance to succeed.
Yeah, there you go. Another look. Just look at them. Like, they're never smiling. They're never happy here. But that was her smile?
Now, I'm an English teacher, and I know that words matter.
Words matter because English is all about words.
So when we say everyone, we mean everyone.
Okay, good. Got the audience involved.
We do not mean some people, or we would say some people, but we mean everyone.
Everyone.
Yes, and also, we don't mean only those who vote for us.
Exactly. We don't mean this, those. You don't vote for us. We're still going to take care of you on our terms, with our democratic legislation. And, you also mean Donald Trump. What about Donald Trump? You mean him? Woo!
What we mean is all of us.
All of us. Not like Donald Trump. Like, if you don't vote for him, he'll just come to your house and eat your cat. Woo!
That's important, and that's hard, but it's important. Now, we have a chance in this election to elect a president and a vice president for all Americans.
All Americans, not just the ones that vote for them.
For everyone. Yes, and we reject.
Okay, let's do another 10 minutes on everyone, because I don't think we quite understand what your point is here. Say the word everyone like 10 more times, do a bunch of gesticulation, and say it over and over while your husband looks miserable as fuck over here.
Reject that group who is only in it for themselves. That's not us.
That's not us. We're not that group. That's the other group. We don't even think about ourselves. Like, I haven't showered in like 3 years.
That's an important view, that people who know the value of neighbors.
Neighbors. Look at her reaching out, open up her hands. Look at him. Look at this happy motherfucker right here. Married to this happy motherfucker here.
Like we already said we did. That's an important view we have to share. Now, you probably saw that debate the other night. Yeah.
That debate, that...
Great. And what Kamala Harris told us we had to do was we had to turn the page, right?
Boom. She said that. She didn't do that, though.
Yeah. Because we have something really exciting headed in our direction.
Yeah, you don't have anything exciting heading... No, there's nothing exciting heading in your direction from that motherfucker.
I kind of liked it when she did this. Turn the page. You didn't like that?
You like that?
Okay.
You like that? Kamala Harris did that. You like that? So here's the turn the page moment from Kamala Harris.
That we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric.
So she says turn the page quite a bit. It's not the only time she says turn the page, right? Like I found 4 or 5 other times that she did that, said turn the page when I searched for it. And not one time did she make the circle movement that this dingbat's making. Right? So it's, she's just imagining that.
So I need you to be with me and practice with me. What are we going to do? We're going to turn the page. Oh, pretty good. Do it again. We're going to turn the page. And we're going to turn the page. All right, so I'm going to be watching you. Because when
And you don't want her watching you. You don't want her. This is a moment of happiness for Tim Walz.
I see Wisconsin, and
Through these crazy, frickin' unfocused, crazy eyes.
I'm watching national and TV because this is a pretty important place, and Minnesota helped you practice it. with
Minnesota.
this. You just show me this. Turn the page, right? Turn the page. And you know what else that looks like?
Is there something to do with Donald Trump?
Bye-bye.
Boom.
Bye-bye, Donald Trump.
She got it. She nailed it. Woo!
52 days and we are turning the page. 52 days and it is bye-bye, Donald Trump. That's right. Now, my mom always said this to me growing up. Gwen, you have to do the work that's in front of you. And when I was growing up, I thought that meant the dishes.
Boom. Nailing it.
Or my schoolwork. But what that actually meant is what I've actually come to realize, which is empowering. That all of us, with our own eyes, must see the work that is in front of us. And we must define that for ourselves and our community.
She talks about her eyes quite a bit. Her crazy ass eyes, right?
And our state and our country and our region. And that's empowering and that's important because we have to bring everything we have to that, especially...
No, like else you need to go out and vote. It's not that hard, right? I mean, that's all you're asking these people to do. Tell other people to turn your page. Schism is the word I'm looking for. Like there's a schism between whatever this is and something deep and dark lurking inside of her.
Next 52 days, we have to bring our time and our talents and our gift and our vision. And we have to decide how we can best be of service. So I am asking you, even though my mom's not here, she's a retired teacher, as I've already told you.
Oh, she's not dead?
I am asking you if you will, with Tim and Kamala and Doug, me, our children, your friends, and your neighbors,
Where are you going with this, Gwen?
will you do the work that is in front of us?
No, fuck you. We're not doing that. We'll just turn the page. Can we do this? Turn the page thing again? Woo! Yes, we will. Look at that frowny face motherfucker here.
We're going to have really hard conversations with undecided neighbors, and we are still going to have those conversations with people who might have unfortunate signs in their yard. Yes,
Boom. So you're going to go harass people who have Trump signs in their yard, showing up with your crazy eyes. That'll go well.
Because that's what we have to do. Because we have turned the page.
Turn the page. Remember from before?
And we are choosing a new way forward.
Woo! Woo! Okay, you should leave it there. You rocked it, Gwen.
So Wisconsin, you have to be ready because we're asking a lot, and I am going to give you every minute I possibly can over the next 52 days. I'm asking for the same thing from you because here's what our soon-to-be President of the United States, Kamala Harris, says. When we fight, we win.
Boom, nailed it. When we fight, we win. Another one.
When we fight,
We win.
When we fight, we win. We're ready to fight, I think. Yeah?
Wow, we're ready to fight. I'll magnify this stuff here with her face. She get a close up of the crazy.
My privilege to introduce you to someone very special.
Is it not this guy? Not this fucker.
Her name is Isabel Listeine, and she is a shining example of what leadership looks like in our communities. At just 20 years old, she found a way to make a difference. Whether championing women and LGBTQ plus communities, or helping her town rebuild after a storm, or working to bring free school meals to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
She is always using her voice to lift up others. And you know what?
You just met her 10 minutes ago?
She's going to be a teacher.
No way. Oh, way to tie it in. Boom. All right. I guess to segue into here. So that's Gwen Walz, ladies and gentlemen.
I know you and your safety and the special Secret Service, but do you worry about your family too?
I do. I don't talk about it, but I do. I have to worry about family. I have to worry about everybody. I worry about you. I worry about everybody because, look, we're under siege, and no country has ever suffered like we have for the last...
Under siege of what? Like crazy people? Like the official story, which you've completely bought into, that these two lone gunmen, both with mental health issues, with no affiliation to any group or organization, took it upon themselves to go to these events or go to the one event and go to your golf course on their own because you're saying Kamala Harris's their agenda and their rhetoric, but the guy who was the guy who went to the Ukraine, the last guy that went to the Ukraine, clearly is motivated by something else, right? Somebody who's going to the Ukraine has a complete different deal, right? If you're going to the Ukraine, then you're not you're not influenced by Kamala Harris or anybody else. The guy voted for you before. And so he saw what you did. He saw you as president, and he felt you fell out of favor with him. He voted for you. So it has nothing to do with Kamala Harris and these other people. And like I said before, there's a lot more ex-military and people who have guns and are in militias and, who are more willing to storm the Capitol. I mean, there's a lot more people who are on the right, and they're not playing to take out Kamala Harris, right? I mean, there's been no uptick in any sort of Secret Service for her, and she's not behind some glass shield. So the only thing that someone could take from all this, and all the evidence that supports it, is it's fake as fuck, right? And he's just playing on his supporters and everybody else, playing the victim.
3.5, almost 4 years, when they allow millions of people to come into our country from prisons, right?
But those people aren't trying to assassinate you, right? You said this stuff about them eating cats, which turned out not to be true. And you won't even name the people and where they're from. Most of those people are in Florida, like I said before. Many of them are voting. And so, you're not willing to, name names or give up any sort of facts or provide any sort of source information. And you just make up shit all the time, and you've lost all credibility. Like, he's lost more credibility than the mainstream media. I mean, the mainstream media at least covers their stories with false sources and you know, with groups that are supposed to legitimize things. You're going to the government, getting the intelligence community to sign off on something, saying this comes from a credible source. You know, we're the authority. Trump just quotes some bullshit that somebody posted on the internet.
Prisons and terrorists and people from mental institutions, and they take over our parks. Look at New York. They can't play Little League baseball anymore. You know, that doesn't sound serious, but it is serious. When they take away your whole lifestyle.
They can't play Little League baseball anymore.
When they live in hotels better than our incredible veterans who are lying on the street opposite the main entrance to a hotel, and in that hotel you have illegal aliens that have come in, and by the way, destroy.
So that's why you fear for your family, not that these crazy guys are trying to shoot you. So this is Trump's. You know, he just like his bullshit meter is just broken, right?
From all over, what did you
So there's more of this stuff here.
do? We will not tell you. They're coming from the Congo. They're coming from Africa. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming
from the Congo. There's people coming from the Congo that are coming into our country.
from all over the world. Asia, a lot of it coming from Asia.
Asia.
And what's happening to our country is we're just destroying the fabric of life in our country, and we're not going to take it any longer. And you got to get rid of these people. Give me a shot. You will have a safe New York within 3 months. 3 months.
So you're going to get how many immigrants? I don't know how many illegal immigrants are in New York. You're going to get them all out of New York in 3 months. What about all the other criminals that are there? New York has a really high crime rate, and, you know, it's New York.
Woo! For every New Yorker being terrorized by this wave of migrant crime, November 5th will be your liberation day. It's going to be liberation because you are living like hell. You're living a life like hell. I will launch a special task force of elite federal law enforcement people, many of whom I already know, that are tough, and charge them with crushing the MS-13 remnants. You know, the problem is I got them out, and now they come back in. They just walk back in like there's nothing to it. But eliminating MS-13 in every foreign gang and organized criminal network opening up on American soil. They're coming in by the millions, not by the hundreds. They're coming in by the millions.
Millions. There's millions of people pouring into our border, kind of like the U.S. debt clock. There's a million people. They count to 10 million illegal immigrants just came through the border. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was another million right there.
Think of it. Probably 21 million people. That's probably a low number. We can do all of this and more, but patriotic New Yorkers must get your asses out to vote. How to get up? Get up. Harry, get up, Harry. Harry, get your fat ass out of the couch. You're going to vote for Trump today, Harry.
He wants Harry's vote. So this is from a while back, but this is kind of hilarious.
Superstar Nikki Jam. Do you know Nikki? She's hot.
She's hot. Nikki Stone, she's really hot, this Nikki. She's a hot tomato, Nikki Jam.
Where's Nikki? Where's Nikki? Thank you, Nikki. Great to be having you here. Now you have to get... Oh, look. Come here.
She's so hot.
I'm glad
Nikki's a dude.
he came up.
Nikki's a
It's
dude.
an honor to me to meet you, Mr. President.
Okay. You thought you were a girl up until about 10 seconds ago.
So our top story this hour, another moment from that Trump event in Flint, Michigan, to show you.
It must be horrible. I bet it's really traumatizing, Mika. Because you look like you're sucking on a fucking lemon there, Mika, with Gumby Joe and his hairdo.
This is Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders
What'd she say?
taking a swipe at Vice President Kamala Harris for not having her own biological children.
Oh, fuck. This happened, and I can't believe you did that.
Not only do my kids serve as a permanent reminder of what's important, they also keep me humble. You can walk into a room like this where people cheer when you step onto the stage, and you might think for a second that you're kind of special.
Yeah, you're not, Sarah. You're not the good kind of special. You're that other kind of special.
Then you go home and your kids remind you very quickly you're actually not that big of a deal. And ours are pretty good at it. So my kids keep me humble. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Whoa. Whoa. That's horrible. Whoa.
What is their obsession with women without
I
children?
don't understand it. I don't understand that. Now, first of all, Donald Trump lacks all humility. Donald Trump has zero humility. I mean, Kamala Harris might have some sense of, like, Donald Trump has nothing where he feels embarrassed about anything he says or regrets anything he says or, anything where he's self-reflective. He just doesn't have it, which is, I mean, it's a horrible thing to have when you're a politician or anything like that. And so there's that. But her not having kids is significant, right? Her not being a mom is significant. I mean, in terms of, I'm not saying she has to be. I don't care. Like, that doesn't matter to me. There's too many fucking people anyway, right? It's probably better that someone like Kamala doesn't have kids, right? Because of just the kind of person she is. I mean, Donald Trump's kids are no treat or no prize. I mean, they're horrible. But either way, like, it's not such a horrible thing to say, right? Because, being a mom is an important aspect of a woman's life. It's like a whole thing. It's a whole, when you're a mother, when you're a father, it, right? As soon as you become a father and mother, things change. Like, there's just, things that happen to you. Especially if you lean in and embrace the role, it just changes you as a person, and there's a maturity level, and you start thinking about other people, right? And, like, she's going to go on to say this.
Their biological connection.
Yeah, I mean...
Kamala Harris is the stepmother of 2 children with her husband, Doug Emhoff, Cole and Ella Emhoff.
They were like 15 and 16 when they met her, and they didn't live with her, right? I mean, they spent some time with her, and they have a good relationship with her, but she's more like an aunt, right? I was an uncle. I might have, each of my sisters has 3, so 6, 9 nieces and nephews. So I was an uncle 9 times, right? And it's a lot different being an uncle than being a dad. It's not nearly the same thing.
They call her Mamala. They consider her as
They call her Mamala, so she's just like a mom. Like, she's a mom, but even better, she's a Mamala.
Mother as their own. In response to Governor Sanders' comments, their biological mother, Kirsten Emhoff, wrote on social media, quote, Cole and Ella keep us inspired to make the world a better place. I do it through storytelling. Kamala Harris has spent her entire career working for the people, all families. That keeps you pretty humble.
Yeah, she doesn't. She's not. I mean, whatever humility Kamala Harris has, you don't see it as well. I mean, I don't know what goes on because Kamala Harris isn't a developed person. Like, you don't, whenever she talks off the cuff like she did on, unrestrained like she did on the Oprah Winfrey interview, she's just repulsive. You can't even listen to her. Like, when she's just being herself, right? Like, she's one of the people that you say, please don't be yourself. Like they're pleading with her not to be herself. But the whole thing is, I mean, it's beyond that. Like, it's beyond any of the stuff that they're trying to push out there. Immigration or her not being a mom or her saying, whatever about Trump. I mean, the thing is such a mess. We're a divided country. And a divided country is ripe for the picking. I mean, if you're playing a team and there's infighting, the players and the coaches and, everyone in the organization is at each other's throats. I mean, whenever you're in a situation where the people around you, your family, your spouse, I mean, when you're turned on each other and you're fighting with each other, you can't fight off the world, right? Like, when you're fighting with each other, it's like the worst. And then when the world's attacking you, and so America is just ready to be plucked, right? Trump is, I mean, he goes after these people. Biden and Harris says the worst things, lies, slanders, just makes up anything about them and treats them like they're the world's worst people. And he's like, oh, we had such a nice conversation with them.
Big lump of inflation that this administration has given us. And I have to say that President Biden called me yesterday. It was very nice. We had a very nice conversation. I appreciated that he called about, what happened the other day.
Yeah, when the guys didn't try to assassinate you, or there's no bullets fired.
And he says, he's committed. He's committed. No, and today, a little while ago, I got a very nice call from Kamala. No, it was very nice. It was very nice.
They would like to mispronounce her name, which is kind of hilarious because it drives the Democrats nuts.
It was very, very nice, and we appreciate that. But we have to take back our country. We have to win. We're going to win, and we're going to make.
Like he talks about these nice conversations. It's just bizarre. Like they're just fake as fuck, right? They're not calling you because they hate you. You hate them. Like,
raising comments.
I don't understand why it's so difficult for the press to have a consistent narrative about how dangerous Trump is.
What are you talking about? That's all they've been saying now for almost 8 years. The press has been saying that. What are you talking about? Like,
can't go back and give this very dangerous man another chance to do harm to our country and the world. They were merciless about what they saw as President Biden's, problems in the debate and
oh my gosh, he's horrible.
Calling for him to withdraw.
Okay, here to react, Fox News contributor Joe Concha.
Okay, so they're upset at Fox because she was saying these things 24 hours after the fake assassination attempt.
Joe, good morning to you. So it sounds like Hillary Clinton does not agree with Republicans when they say that kind of rhetoric is what is leading to these assassination attempts.
Yeah, come on. It's not that thing. The guy could think for himself. The guy this guy was a go-getter, right? I mean, how many people, there's a story of a guy who went and tried to kill bin Laden, and they made it into a movie starring Nicolas Cage called Army of One. These people are go-getters, right? I mean, he went to the Ukraine, and he started GoFundMe pages. This guy isn't, just listening to Kamala Harris and to tell him what to do, like some, fat fuck sitting on his couch, and hears something Kamala says and says, "Oh, I better go get Trump." Like, there's no. It's silly. Trump's saying that. I mean, it's just, they're all just liars. They just lie about everything, right? I mean, it just sucks so bad. Here's Joe Biden's response.
I think thank God the president's okay.
He's rocking the Crypt Keeper mullet here. We're going to get to a Joe Biden speech because I want to talk about that. Because I don't know why Trump Trump sucks. His campaign managers suck. Why aren't they talking about this? Because Kamala's linked to this, right? You got to talk about how they lied to us for almost 4 years, over 4 years, that this guy had mental deterioration. He had cognitive issues.
The Secret Service defending its security protocols around Trump right now, saying the suspect who appeared to be planning to assassinate the former president at his Florida golf club, quote, did not have line of sight on him. Many tonight calling for an end to the violent threats and divisive rhetoric in the country, including my former CNN colleague, Don Lemon.
We want everyone to be safe, including Donald Trump if you don't like him, including Kamala Harris if you don't like her.
We want everyone to be safe in the world. We don't want anybody to die ever. Right? Like, nobody cares. I don't care what happens. I certainly aren't rooting for them to die or whatever, but, if it happens, it happens. Whatever reason it does happen, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, people die all the time. And when you don't know them and you don't particularly like them, it doesn't affect you. Like, most people just don't care. I mean, people will be traumatized, people who are delusioned by the idea that Kamala Harris or Donald Trump are going to do something. But they really like now to put Don Lemon on their shows. He's dying on the internet. He is just dying. And they're not going to bring him back. I mean, I hope they don't. I hope they do for my sake. But after paying him $24 million to leave and how bad he sucked, but they keep on bringing him back here.
But to just blame this on rhetoric, I think there's some credence to that. And you have to look at where that rhetoric is coming from. Again, no excuse, But almost every day, quite honestly, Donald Trump says something incendiary. But to have Republicans saying that, oh, they're...
It's rhetoric, so she's bringing him in here. He's got his new book. Here he is.
Watching here would know you as well.
I was once lost. He was once lost, but now he's found.
He has a new book out. It is an amazing book, Don. As I was saying, it is
In Search for God in America.
profound, and the stories about you growing up, you just captured me
So
there
good
with
to
the
see you,
stories.
by the way.
It is wonderful to see you.
Oh, that's weird.
So, okay, you have the situation going on right now with Trump, shooting after shooting. It's thoughts and prayers until the next one, and then it's thoughts and prayers again. And you write in your book, the shame should bring us all to our knees, all of us as a nation to our effing knees. You got that, and then you have another assassination attempt.
Yeah. So the question is, why did I write it? I think the hardest story that I ever covered was Newtown, and seeing all those in Connecticut with all those.
Oh, Jesus. All right, the shame, he's going to get to Elon Musk here. Oh, so here it is.
Yesterday, Elon Musk comes out and he tweets, and no one is even trying to assassinate Biden, Kamala, and then he has a thinking face emoji, right? So this is the context of the
Wait, he was
the
a
rhetoric
thinking. Wait, let's
that
go
you
back
just,
there.
The rhetoric that right, so of the rhetoric that you just
Use the thinking face emoji. There's a thinking face emoji. I mean, that's just crazy. You know, it's silly to think that this is real, because the question is, why would they be going after Trump and not Kamala? And why would they be so bad at it, right? I mean, these attempts are failed. They only have helped Trump. I mean, Trump loves these things.
Kamala, and then he has a thinking face emoji, right? So this is the context of the rhetoric that you just referred to in your post. Now, it was up for several hours. Finally, he takes it down because there's outrage, and so he does remove the post. Look, you worked for him. He ended the deal abruptly on X after you interviewed him, and you pressed him on free speech. I know you're in a lawsuit against him right now, but you know him.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you're able to say about what you thought when you saw that tweet with that thinking emoji.
It's just the thinking emoji. It puts it over the top.
Well, listen, again, I'm in litigation with him, so I have to be very careful about what I can say. I'm very
I don't know how we could. There was no contract, right?
disappointed in the way he reacted to me. But let me just say I'm glad that he took it down. How about that? Because we should.
That's good. Like, don't say anything more because you're in litigation. Because he didn't want to pay for somebody that he realized sucked so bad they couldn't possibly carry an audience, which is what's happened, right? Like, he's dying on the internet. He gets no views. He's making no money, and he's probably hemorrhaging money just keeping his team together to put out that crappy content.
Let me just say about Joe Biden,
It's just so horrible.
hello to all my divine nine brothers and sisters, and my sorors.
What kind of accent is that?
And to all my HBCU brothers and sisters. I have to.
It's just so bad. Taylor Swift writes whiny songs about all her exes. Stevie Nicks made her ex play guitar while she sung songs about what an asshole he was. And there you have it, the defining difference between boomers and millennials. Yeah, boomers boomers are the worst. Like, millennials are bad, but each generation, if you're going to say the next generation sucks, it's the previous generation's fault, right? Like, it's the blood is on our hands, the whininess is on our hands because of these generations. I mean, we've done them a disservice, right? We failed these generations. If each generation is getting worse, it's the previous generation's fault, right? Apocalypse delayed. Trump keeps promising a doom that never comes. Well, that's kind of the way it works. Oh, this is even better. 784 dildos have been seized from Diddy's home. That's a lot of dildos, Diddy. That's just too many dildos, Diddy. I mean, I think one is too many if you're a guy, but... So it's the next day. It's Sunday, September 22nd, and I was telling my wife about this today. Like, I shot this clip that you're seeing Saturday. And so, I was telling her about this, and sometimes I come up with my best jokes when I'm talking to my wife about this. And so, all right, the most dildos that you could possibly, and I don't know. Like, I don't put any value in owning a dildo. Like, there's no place for a dildo in my life, right? Like, I don't, know exactly why you would need one. I mean, I kind of do. Like, I know how people use them. But, like, they're just a joke. Like, it's just, the kosher dildos from that rabbi, like all that stuff. And, it's something that's shameful. But let's say that for whatever reason you're a dildo connoisseur. You probably could get every possible dildo, within 20, dildos or 50. Like like you're getting up to 750. You're just a hoarder, right? You're just a dildo hoarder. You're just like, come on, Diddy, save some dildos for the rest of us. Stop hoarding all the dildos. And so, he's basically a dildo hoarder. All right, let's. I guess that's going to make it into the title of the video because it's too funny not to. All right, let's get to the other thing here. Go back to the other thing. But anyways, the way it works, apocalypse is, they come all at once, right? Like you can see them coming, which you can see now, and then it's not. Trump is just using it for his own. I mean, Trump doesn't really believe it's going to end, or everyone who's campaigning on something like that doesn't get it, right? Because there's no stopping it. They're like, if it's going to really come, it's going to come no matter what. So Elon Musk put this up on Twitter. Like, look at the Statue of Liberty. She's grooving like just... Like, what do you guys think? This guy's a complete tool. He sucks. He's a horrible person. And you're digging this guy, right? I mean, it's just, he's not that guy. He's not carrying a torch. He doesn't have a flag. He's not this guy that you want him to be. He's just not that guy. So this is Loomer Unleashed. The media is desperate to silence me with their lies, calling me a racist and a 9/11 conspiracy theorist.
President Trump for doing everything that he's doing for our country. I want to thank everybody that stood by me through all these vicious attacks. And,
this is a face made for radio.
I want to even thank the media. I want to thank the haters in the media.
And it's a voice made for not talking or not listening. I mean, she has zero appeal here.
For reminding people of why you're so awful. This is why people are flocking to free speech sites like X and Rumble, because you are censors. You are censors who want to silence and censor anybody who you can't control. You can't control me. That's why you hate me. I'm not a violent person. I made a joke. Some people liked it. Some people didn't. I don't really care. So I'm not a...
I don't care, but that's what I'm talking about. The thing is, they don't want to silence you. I mean, they're not trying to silence her because as soon as they saw her on the Trump plane, they had a ghoulgasm. They immediately, they immediately were like, oh my God, we can talk about Laura Loomer being with Trump and Trump's in a relationship with Laura Loomer. If every liberal media person and all the politicians, all these conservative people are talking about you, it's because they want you to be they want you to talk, because you're a disadvantage for Trump. You're cancer for Trump, right? Like all these people are asking Trump people about you and the relationship you have with Trump. That means that you suck. Like you're somebody that they can use as a weapon against him. If they want to disappear you, they just find a way to, ignore you and all these things. I mean, they want people to hear about your voice. They want people to look at you and see, oh my God, be repulsed, right? Like you're Trump's Kamala. Like,
racist. I'm not a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. Say what you want about me. It's not going
You're not?
to stop me from exposing you. It's not going to stop me from breaking all of my stories and
All the stories. What stories have you broken? The one about the Haitians eating cats that turned out to be false?
and devastating the Kamala Harris for President campaign, like I have been doing from the get-go. They are so scared of me. They are so scared of a 31-year-old woman with a website and a show on Rumble. They're so scared because we're getting more viewers than them. How many people on CNN and MSNBC have 500,000 live viewers? How many people can...
You get 500,000 viewers? Like, that's everything you need to know about America, right? 5,000... If she gets 500,000 people watching her, this skank, right, with the obnoxious voice and her dumbed-down opinions, and she's repulsive, and she's completely pro-Israel, nothing to do with being a truther, the opposite of all those things. And what, she gets QBs? I mean, it's depressing.
Say that their videos get 500 million views in 1 month. They can't stop me because you can't break me. You can't break my spirit.
You can't break her spirit. Point to your spirit.
I have nothing to lose anymore. You guys took everything from me when you canceled me years ago. Remember when you banned me everywhere? You made me the most banned woman in the world.
She's the Alex Jones of obnoxious skanks. So I looked it up. It kind of bugged me that she'd be getting that many views. It's still bad. She's lying here. I went to her Rumble page, and she has a few videos that got like 100,000 views, but most of them are well under 20. And, you know, whatever else, she's getting 3,000 views on Twitter. And she has a lot of videos where she'll put up little short segments from her, you know, her long, like, rants about, you know, whatever it is. But she's still getting a lot of views, and that's the sad fact that, you know, I got some comments I want to get to, so I'll come back to this then, about her getting all these views and how, you know, people like me are struggling. Like, real truthers are struggling, and skanks like this and horrible people. She's unlistenable. Like, it's not just that she's bad. Like, she's annoying. She's got an annoying voice. She's got an annoying face. Like, her whole presentation as a person is repulsive, just like Kamala. And people are so dumbed down, and they're so, you know, they're so binary, right, that they'll gravitate to anything that sounds something like what they already believe. I'm going to come back to that at the end I got some stuff to say about Trump here. I got another little bit from that book I covered in my last video, where Trump lost massive amounts of money, which I totally believe is true. Okay, so then there's this.
In the days following Trump's debate against Kamala Harris, the left-wing media and the Democrat Party have been going absolutely insane, if you haven't noticed, over his...
Like it's just like something's wrong here. Must be like lots of plastic surgery or something. Or like she's wearing a mask. She's really an alien.
Comments regarding immigration. Specifically, they have lost their minds. They're just apoplectic, foaming at the mouth, just out of control, going ballistic on television over Donald Trump's assertion that Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio are eating the neighborhood dogs and cats.
There's zero proof for that. Like, everyone can agree now that there's zero proof, that there was just some bullshit social media rumors that people picked up on. And when they found out there was nothing to back it up, it wasn't sourced. Like, it wasn't, you know, if Trump was a human being and had any sort of a conscience and any sort of standards, he would have said, all right, I'm going to need real proof that this is actually happening before I'm going to say it. Trump just hears it and says it, right? He's like Alex Jones, like in that sense where it suits him and he just says it. And announces it like it's fact. And then when he gets exposed for being a piece of shit liar, he doesn't change his story. And this is a bad thing. Like, this is, you know, in terms of Trump, this is the final nail in his coffin. Like, the stuff that he did, the fake shooting, I mean, that kind of was, and, you know, all these things. But this campaign, he's just, you know, everything that he lost in terms of being entertaining, in terms of being, you know, funny or these things, is when he did Operation Warp Speed and he closed the economy down. He got worked by the COVID stuff. And then the way he handled the election and post-election, and then everything since. And now he's just like, whatever part of him was entertaining is no longer there. I mean, once in a while, like he says something that's kind of funny. It was kind of funny when he said they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, but it has significant ramifications here.
For days, they've whined about how racist these comments were, and that other
Wait, they whined, right? She said they whined.
Haitians around the country were feeling hurt and betrayed, as if we're supposed to worry about the feelings of people who are not supposed to be in our country to begin with, right?
So these Haitians that are legal, they've immigrated here legally. But she's talking about whining, and she's, a very pro-Jewish person. The Jewish community has lobbying groups and the Anti-Defamation League. I mean, they have terms like blood libel. And, if somebody said this about Jewish people, eating dogs and eating cats, right? Like she and these other people would have a meltdown. But it's completely okay to say about Haitians. And again, there's Haitian citizens. There's people from Haiti who are either here legally, which most of these people in Springfield apparently are. They're working towards citizenship, and or they are already citizens here. They've been born here. It's a small island not that far from here. And so there's Haitian Americans here, and they're being called. It's being said that they, because of their voodoo practices, they like to eat cats, ducks, and dogs, which makes no sense at all, right? Like, wouldn't it be chickens if it's voodoo? Like, it's chickens when it's voodoo. But again, it smears a whole group of people. Even if there were a few Haitians out there that did some bizarre practices and they did this, it would be a small minority of those people. And Trump won't even say the word Haitian. He called them first. He said they were from Venezuela when he was talking about Springfield, and that's Aurora. Like he couldn't get his immigrants straight. And then he said all these things about them that were false about the town, and they're being told by the people who run that town to shut the fuck up. And you're still spreading these lies. You're just a nasty person. You're just this nasty skank. And Trump has like the worst taste in women. Okay, so I want to close with this here. Joseph R. Biden. Robinette is his middle name. His middle name is Robinette.
Long time. And not only thank you for the introduction, David, but thank you for your friendship. And thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here. Yesterday was an important day for the country, in my view. 2.5 years after the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates, it announced that it would begin lowering interest rates. I think it's good news for consumers.
Okay, so he's clearly is. I mean, he's not making any gaffes yet. But he's slowly. Let's go through this here.
Without the most advanced infrastructure in the world, how can that be? That's why I wrote and worked so hard to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law.
He can't articulate his words anymore. He's already mispronounced a number of words because he's starting to slur his speech. I mean, he's not started. He's been doing this for a while, but now it's taken full hold over him.
Law and generations modernize our roads, bridges, ports, airports, trains, buses, removing every lead pipe from schools and homes so every child could drink clean water, providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where they live.
Let's just go a little bit further here.
As you all know, this is one audience I want to explain to. These fabs are bigger than football fields. Creating jobs that are going to pay over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree.
You just don't.
Single month for nearly 4 years. Increased 210%. On the other team's watch, factory construction barely increased 2%.
Okay, so we could go through there. I'm sure there's a number of gaffes, and he just looks lost all the time now. Okay, so again, Sunday, September 22nd, I am adding something to this video. I was going to end with that, but I had an audio, and I'm not sure where it is, and I don't think I labeled it. I didn't put it in the video, so I'll just redo it here. And I'll segue into the Trump thing about him just being a disaster and losing money, and then I just have a few comments to get to. But it's really very telling about Trump. And so them disappearing Biden, like I talked about in the introduction, very first introduction to this video, he's just disappeared. And all the energy has gone with him. like all the support he had and how people said they were Biden lovers and how great Joe Biden was. They've already moved on to Kamala, the delusional Democrats, right? You know, they'll give him his flowers, whatever it is, but he's done. And the Republicans have forgotten about him. I mean, it's just a tragedy. You know, what I was saying is that, you know, the Republicans have failed here to make this a big deal. Like, they should be pushing this thing where they're saying, you know, this guy, I mean, that Kamala Harris is complicit in something that everybody knows, that this guy's senile. I mean, Americans have agreed that he's senile for over 6 months. There was a poll, but it's probably the last year. And the Democrats gaslit everybody and lied to them about what he was, you know, what he was like behind closed doors, how great he was, while they secretly were moving on to Kamala. And the Republicans aren't making a big deal about that. Like, Trump isn't talking about it in a way that he should and pushing the mainstream media and everybody who covered up for him until they didn't. And then it was agreed upon that this guy was incapable of running for president, which means he's incapable of being president, but they're still leaving him hanging on there, even though no one's paying attention to him. But after the election, this is going to be a thing, right? You know, this is Trump's, you know, the stuff to do with the, you know, the hard drive from hell that he talked about from Hunter Biden. And he's losing an opportunity here to talk about how Kamala, who still says Joe Biden is the greatest, and he's still got it, even though why is she running then? I mean, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the Democratic establishment, all these people came in and they pushed him out of there. And, you know, now he's just forgotten. Everyone's moved on. And it'd be great when that happens with Trump, but we'll see. But there's just a it's just another failure of Trump and his campaign, which is a mess. Not to hammer, like, he should have said more about this at the debate. It should have been his main focus instead of immigration, which he keeps on hitting, and talk about how they lied to the American people. The American people are so docile, they accepted it. You know, the degradation here is just off the charts. Anyways, let's get into this piece here. Okay, so this woman with the hair is back. YouTube recommended this, you know, this video of her talking about the lucky loser. And she just said things that she said in the other interviews, except for this, right? This part here. And it's something that I brought up, how the media has been complicit with Trump. Like, Trump was a shitbag for years. He was horrible, incompetent, and you can see it now. He does dumb stuff all the time, right? Like, you can believe all of the stuff that they're saying about him because he does stupid shit all the time. The Loomer stuff and all the things he's done recently, he backs the wrong person, he says the wrong thing, he focuses on, you know, all of it. You know, the reasons that I said that I felt like he won the debate was Kamala was not even a human being. She was just remembered a bunch of talking points, and she delivered them poorly, right? Where Trump, you know, when they said Biden beat Trump, it was because everyone had low expectations for Biden. You know, they thought Biden was going to have one of his senior moments, and he was more lucid during the interview, during the debate. And Trump, you know, didn't do maybe as good as he had predicted. And so they said Biden won, like they just made it up. But in the same standard of judging, Trump was supposed to go off and go on rants and be totally triggered. And he was actually pretty reserved, right? And so from those standpoints, what the Democrats thought Trump was going to do and how they prefaced the debate of Kamala Harris triggering him, he was as good as he could have been, right? And he's already a known factor. And so he didn't act out the way that would have hurt him, where Kamala Harris didn't define herself and she didn't trigger Trump the way that she was supposed to. So Trump won that debate, right? Based in their own standards of saying Joe Biden won the debate because he didn't shit himself, you know, because, I mean, it's just like that was the level of, I mean, Trump even said it. He said that Joe Biden was going to be senile. He's going to show everybody how senile he was, and he didn't do it. And so they said Biden won the debate, right? And so, you know, by all of those kind of standards, if you think about how Trump is and who he is, people have all these low standards for his ability to not do gaffes himself and not make the wrong decision. And he's done the wrong decision so many times. You see him making the wrong decision. You see him getting worked. You see him, what he did with Operation Warp Speed, how he handled COVID, and all throughout his presidency, he just makes bad decisions, and he thinks he's like the chosen one and things will just work out. And a lot of the reasons he doesn't make good decisions is he's not a person who learns from mistakes. He's not a person who's looking for self-improvement. And those kind of people always fail, especially when they grew up with with wealth and like a son of a king, right? And they just think things are going to work out for them and they never do. Sons of great men or sons of successful men are often failures. And they don't know why, because they haven't gone through the kind of the tests and things that mold you into a person who succeeds. So everything that's said about him in these books is believable because we know he sucks, right?
In recent weeks during the debate.
I'm going to get to the media's role in being somewhat complicit, if you will, in creating him. But you report that on his tax returns, it shows that he lost over $1 billion. Wait a minute, $1 billion between 1985 and 1994?
Right. That year is incredible, or that 10 years when we look at it, because The Art of the Deal came out that year.
Mm-hmm.
That year that he was saying to America, and he was writing a book, that he was this deal maker and that, nobody could touch him, and he was going on shows, and he lost that year, I think, $40-some million. And in that decade, he lost more than $1 billion. And Russ and I were able to, we had all this tax information from that decade. Right. It was one of the stories we did.
Not during his presidential years.
No,
we didn't get those.
But what was interesting was, because you sort of, people think, okay, well, businessmen, they lose a lot of money. But we were able to get access to an anonymized taxpayer database from the National Archives. And we went in and we were able to determine that in a few years, he lost more money than any other individual taxpayer in America. Like, this isn't just some business guys lose money. Like, he loses a lot of money year in and year out.
And you've got all the facts to prove this. You've got the paperwork, you've got the documents, the numbers add up.
We come with the receipts. And
yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you again about...
Okay, so the reason why I believe all that is because of what I just said, right? And the way these guys make money is based in who they are. They go into banks and they're given loans at low interest because they are people that the banks trust and they're established people. And they do everything based in, they get cheap money. They get money where they get low interest rate on large amounts of money. And they invest it and they get a bigger return on their investment. But I know Trump had all these failures in terms of his business. Trump University, there's so many things. Trump Steaks, Trump Water. Like he had all these failures, like Shark Tank like failures, right? These business enterprises that he tried to create, and they failed. And, he had to go bankrupt on these various projects, his real estate projects. I know many of these things myself, just from, knowing Trump, that these businesses failed. And the media kept on saying this guy was great. And then, of course, he was on The Apprentice. And so they created this illusion. And anybody with any, they must have known these things were true, right? That he was just a blowhard. And, he was just this braggadocious guy that, pretended to be something with small smoke and mirrors. He wasn't paying his people. This was out there. And people knew it. And people who worked for him, people he screwed over, the bankruptcies and all this stuff. But they didn't ever say the truth about this guy. So they let the guy exist in an imaginary world that he created, that he was successful when he was really, a big-time failure. He lost more money than anybody else in terms of his tax returns, like over a 10-year period during his prime years. And after being that kind of a flim-flam man, a con man, and a failure, he becomes president, right? Where, all these things, he's just a disaster. And up until a certain point, I would have loved that. I loved it because I knew this was kind of true. I had no idea the extent. And, it's much more obvious now. But at some point, the failure just is, and in all of it, the lies and the illusion. Like, I have no respect for the presidency, the office of the presidency, and the media and this whole thing. And Trump made a mockery of all of that. And so I love that, right? But then, real things started to happen with COVID, and he got worked on it, and he failed that. He's just totally failed us, right? And then he failed in the electoral process, and then he failed fighting the corrupt system, and, he was considered kind of a truther adjacent person. He hurt the truth community. He brought in censorship. And just it gets tiresome listening to the guy, right? Like he just wore out his welcome. I mean, he should have for everybody. But then he comes back and, after all these lawsuits and criminal cases and all this stuff that he, the chaos, he comes back and he just sucks. Like he's, way worse than he was, and he's just making up lies. And, he's got these people that will follow him to, hell and back, right? These, these cult-like followers. And it's time for him to go, right? He just disappear and just, the age of Trump has to end. And, again, he's the opposite of what everybody thinks he is in terms of the people that support him. He's the opposite because he won over the liberal media. It wasn't the conservative media that loved Trump. It was the liberal media. He was in New York City. He NBC. He got these contracts with NBC for The Apprentice. And he was just, the Hollywood people loved him. Rappers loved him. Everyone, Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. He represented wealth. Like people thought about who's wealthy. Trump. Trump's wealthy, right? And he was the opposite of wealth. He was like somebody losing money. He was more in debt than anybody. And he would just go bankrupt and never take responsibility for his failures. And then they gave him the position of president, which is, in itself wonderful. But now it's, we got to jettison from this whole thing. And, even if he loses, I don't think he goes away. So, I don't know how they'll frame it, but they're going to keep this guy around for as long as they can because now they're using him. He's their biggest asset to push an agenda that nobody really wants. Like when the smoke clears, nobody's going to want to see the effects of the Trump era. We've been in the land of Trump. We've been in Trump land for the past 8 years. And so it's affected everybody in ways they have no idea. And the erosion of everything, and the Democrats and the liberal media, like they're worse than Fox is, right? MSNBC and CNN were more balanced than Fox for years, and they were getting beaten down in the ratings. But now they've gone just like crazier than Fox. They're so one-sided in all of it, right? And so, this is Trump. This is who he is. And whatever was interesting about it, when it was kind of fun to watch, is no longer there. Like, it's just a nightmare now. It's just this, like he's no longer funny, and his stick is no longer funny, and, the whole thing. It's you just jumped the shark. And the people that support him are so desperate. And the way they are in the truth community, it's just icky, the whole thing. And there's been so many truthers that have been compromised by this guy for just no reason, like up until this point. Desperate people looking for an unrealistic outcome that he can't provide, and nobody can. So I went for a walk with my dogs, and I was going to wrap that one up there about Trump, but I want to add something to it. Some part of me loves this kind of shit, right? You guys know that. I love the apocalypse. I just find it funny. Like something about me knew this was coming. I've lived through it before. And when things fall apart, especially bad things, I find it hilarious. It's just something about it. Like I get this giddy feeling inside, like a, happiness, like it just, creates serotonin and dopamine. Like it's just one of those things that I have, that's why I call it apocalypse. And Trump represents that in lots of ways. The fraudulent nature, a guy who's been a complete flim-flam man. I find all that great and hilarious, and I had for years. But, it's just gotten old. There's things that are funny until they just, you push it too far, and then it becomes the opposite of funny, right? And most recently, Trump's had a number of bad years of whining and, where he could have been taking some responsibility for his failures. Apologizing for Operation Warp Speed, apologizing for throwing his followers under the bus after the big event in January, I mean, all the things that he did to be just a total piece of shit. But he doubled down on all those things. And then when he comes in and he perpetrates a false flaggy kind of, fake assassination with the WWE blood. And for all these truthers and people who had been calling out these fake events, and then all of a sudden, well, Trump's was real. He infiltrated the truth community and he hurt the truth community. He got you guys to buy into something. All you guys who believe in that. I don't think anybody who believes in that listens to my videos anymore because, it only shames and embarrasses them for their failure, right? But he perpetrated, kind of a hostile act against all of us by doing that, doing that whole freaking stick with the fake, fake bullet in the ear, the bandage gate and the ketchup gate and all the stuff. And that's a smack against the truth community, but also his own followers who he's deceiving and then trying to look like a tough guy in the fight, and all that fake shit. So there's that part of it. And then to double down and just be this like fake truther that's calling out cats and saying that the mainstream media doesn't report the truth and then make stuff up because there's a rumor that he heard on a very weak Facebook post that the Republican Party leaned into. That, again, is a slap against the truth community, all of us, and people who, think about and take responsibility for what they're saying, right? Like are conscious of how it affects other people and have to do real research and, bear the brunt of being, disenfranchised and being, disowned, shunned, whatever you want to call it, the way that we have treated as truthers. And for him to be so irresponsible and say shit like that, and just it's loser stuff, like it's not going to help him. The people that appeals to are already voting for him. It hurts him in terms of voters and his credibility. And he just sucks, right? He just is a horrible person. Somebody who, it's like he's got a death wish and he wants to take everyone else down with him, right? He has a failure wish. The guy just really is a loser and wants to fail, and he wants to fail in such a way that it, takes America down with him, right? Like the guy is just that selfish rather than give up the presidency and say, really, I can only do harm. At this point, I'm so polarizing. I'm just going to hurt America. I'm going to hurt these people that are my supporters. I'm going to hurt everybody. I just got to go on. I just got to move on. Like it just, I don't have anything to offer. I don't really have any real solutions. I don't have anything. And so the only thing I could do is just hang him up and, go out somewhat gracefully. That's the opposite of Trump. Like he's, he'll take everybody down and the whole country down just for his own, whatever, ego and things like this. He's a horrible person. And he just, the sooner he disappears, the better off we'll be. But it's not like that's going to solve anything. Like then you're left with all the, it's going to be boring without Trump in terms of these other politicians. There'll never be another Trump. So, but it's not like we'll miss him, right? Like if you know what he is, he's not someone that you miss. But, as selfish and sucky as he is, the other candidates are less interesting. And it just be, they suck just as bad, but not on the, not as grandiose as he is. Anyways, let's move on here. I just talked to my wife, so she's out and she was driving, and I sent her these 3 videos I had of these people talking about Trump. And she had also watched some of The Apprentice. We didn't know each other back then. And, we were talking about this, and I meant to say this earlier. When most people go bankrupt, like I had friends who went bankrupt, right? People who got into credit card debt, people had issues. I had a whole thing. I was put on this thing called check systems when I was in college because I had all these overdraws, drafts, just irresponsible shit. Like I'd go out, take out money when I was drunk, went out to ATM and not balance my checkbook the next day, like just stupid stuff, right? And like I couldn't get a checking account for like a number of years. And I had friends who went bankrupt and they couldn't get credit, right? Like you suffered, like you could do things like that, but you suffered. And, it was kind of a, scummy thing to do to go bankrupt. But like a lot of these people didn't have any choice, right? They made bad financial decisions, but then they're punished for it. They don't have the ability to do it again. But Trump did all this stuff time and time again, went bankrupt, and still was able to get loans. I mean, one failure after another, and hurt all kinds of people financially, stiffed people, didn't pay him. I mean, all just bad shit that he did. And then they made him president, which is funny in itself, but it's like horrible. Like the guys, I was saying to my wife, he's like the captain that doesn't go down with the ship when the ship's sinking. Instead, he stands on all his crew members' heads and people like drowning them just so he can, he can survive the shipwreck. Like he'd be the only survivor and everyone else drowned because he's hanging on to them and using them as life jackets. Like he's just one of those people. He's a horrible human being. And it's kind of great that he's president, but now it's run its course, right? And it's just, his next presidency will be like a hell for everybody. And the people that supported him, I mean, he always turns on people. Like that's just what he does. He throws people under the bus, like all these people that used to work for him, before even he became a politician. He just fires people and then slanders them and talks about how horrible they were, but when they worked for him, they were the greatest people, and he was the greatest. He's just that guy, right? He's a freaking complete nightmare. All right, let's move on here. Okay, so I just want to wrap this up with a couple of comments here. Hopefully 3, only 2. I must not saved one of them. But the first one is this. Paul sold out to the DNC. So how much do you think the DNC is paying me to make up the nickname Kamala Kneepads Harris? How she serviced a dude that was twice her age, gave up her primary years to be a mom so that she could, become some sort of powerful politician in the state of California. How much do you think the DNC would pay me to do that, right? Like, just because I disagree with you about Trump doesn't mean I sold out. Like, there used to be, the truth community used to be people who, the majority of them, believed in the left-right paradigm. At least the ones who were vocal and making videos. They didn't, especially when, like, Bush was president and he was in charge of this big event in 2001. So the big event in 2001, which most of you newbies don't really know anything about, and my video is still up there on my backup channel, I believe. Let me just go check right here. But, you newbies who don't know about that and who come in thinking you're invented the truth community. And, this thing's been around for years. I mean, long before me and lots of other people woke up in the early 2000s, it was there before that. The video's called My Old 9/11 Videos Remastered. And, it's only got 3,000 views, which sucks. I mean, my last video on that channel got 5,000 views, the one that wasn't about Peacock. And so, like this video, people have wanted me to remake my videos or should bring back the old ones. And the big event 2001 is everything. And Bush was in charge of that, the neocons and the Republicans. And so you can fuck off about, your Republican views because you didn't wake up when you should have. Like, that was the time to wake up. And it was the best time to wake up. Then you would have, been at a different place at this point. And Trump wasn't ever there. He wasn't a truther. He wasn't anything. He's a piece of shit like he's always been. He said the birther stuff, which he failed at. And he just used these things for self-promotion. He used the truth community for self-promotion. And another person writes, Paul, I've been listening to you for about 10 years, and it's not until recently I realized you've got a touch of TDS. Really stupid shit. I enjoy listening to you and always thoughtfully consider the things you say. We agree on much, and I appreciate your point of view on these matters. But if I've uncovered some bias, I'll keep listening to you and support you. Well, you didn't, and you could go fuck off, right? Because, like I said, that Trump was my favorite president in terms of the show. And I talked about how happy I was that the Democrats were so miserable, the liberal media was so miserable when Trump got elected. When Trump got election. And, the guy has just done everything they've said he's done. And it's gotten bad. And at this point, he just needs to go away. And all the things that I think he's going to win, and all the things I'm saying about his presidency and the ways that they're going to attack him and the way that he's going to be, it's just going to be hell for whatever period of time, whatever it is. And it's just going to get worse. The good part of Trump is has long since jumped the shark, and the guy's a failure and a loser and all these things. The evidence is overwhelming. The guy just makes the wrong decision at every turn, and he focuses on the wrong thing. He misses opportunities, and he doesn't learn and grow and change as a person. He never takes any responsibility for any of his mistakes or any of his, he never admits to any of his mistakes. He thinks he's a golden child, and he just fails time and time again, and somehow is bailed out by the universe, like he's just, lucking out in these various ways so that he can do more damage. And now he's not only going bankrupt himself, but he's bankrupting the whole country. And not that Kamala Harris will be any better, because she won't. Like, that's the whole, that's everything that you need to know about this point of view, that there is no solution. And so I'm not sold out. I don't have TDS. I believe that there's no solution. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not. And you guys all kind of know that I'm not. You just have wishful thinking because you don't want to deal with the painful realization that we're fucked, right? Like, that's the whole thing. You guys don't want to admit that you're fucked. And, people back in the early days kind of knew this, but we thought that maybe we could turn it around with waking everybody up, like that was the early days of the truth community. But we knew both sides were corrupted. And just because you think one side is so much worse doesn't mean it is, right? It's still a left-right paradigm. It's still everything that the old school truthers knew it to be. It's just that you won't see it, and that's not my problem. And unfortunately, like this is what I was talking about Laura Loomer. I mean, Laura Loomer is getting, not so many more views than me and other people like me, but she is, and she sucks. She's horrible. She should get no views. She should be unwatchable. So should Kamala Harris. So should Donald Trump. They all suck compared to the content that I produce. Like, I'm not saying my content is spectacular. Like, I can't judge it for whatever it is, but I know it's better than the bullshit that they're saying, right? Because it's, it is, like, just the spiritual stuff alone. And, I can barely scrape up a living here. And, they pander to all these people's belief systems, and people have been so degraded. And I'm watching this thing called Chimp Love or something on HBO, and I have a few other shows I'm going to talk about in my introduction to the next video. But people have gone to such a there's so many degraded people, degraded people, the degradation of our society and the human beings, the idiocracy. It's just horrific. It's so bad. And so, this is the kind of people that are your leaders when the populace is so unnatural and we're going in the wrong direction. These kids are so fucked. These kids are growing up on the internet, and these generations of internet-raised kids, and they're so indoctrinated by all this stuff, and there's no future here, right? The future has long been, the idea that America could turn it around or the world could turn it around. That's from years ago. Like that ship has sailed years ago. There's only one way this thing ends. Like it's just, there's like no version of this that ends in a successful reboot of America and the world and the divinization of the system and people just getting it and becoming, better because of the whole thing. Like what has to happen is the system has to come down. People have to feel the fucking pain of their flaws, our collective wrongdoing and our individual issues. We have to redeem ourselves and connect to God. Like it's like a moment where you fucked up your whole life. You get cancer, you're about to die, or something tragic happens, and you get on your knees and you weep and you pray to God to fucking help you redeem, for some redemption, to make you into a better person. You're just broken and you just give up on, all your bullshit, and you're just, God, I just want to do better. And you mean it sincerely, and then you work at it, and you become like a saint-like person. Like that's what everyone has to do. Like just break down and completely, own up to their bullshit, and stop hiding or their defense mechanisms, and just admit to what you are and who you are, and ask God to help you to be better. And only when society is no longer there to act as a distraction, and people are freaked out, will that happen. And I don't know if people could even do it then. We'll see. We haven't hit that time period yet. But that's what it's going to be. And so these silly ways of trying to categorize me because you can't deal with the truth, it's not, it's not helpful for you, and it's certainly, don't put that shit on me, right? You stop listening if you want. Like, you don't have to be here. Go back to Laura Loomer and these other pieces of shit, right? I don't care. But it's gotten bad, like, fast. It's, it's deteriorating, like, at epic speeds. Only spirituality will save this world. This Paul Romano definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.